Test one, test one. Okay, so time is 12:01. The special city council meeting agenda. The notice is hereby given that the above call meeting of the governing body of the city of Balcones Heights, Texas will be held on Monday, July 8th, 2024 at 12 noon in the Justice Center located at 33 Hillcrest Drive, Balcones Heights, Texas 78201, to consider and act upon any lawful subject which may come before said meeting, including among others, the following items to be discussed and acted upon. So we're going to call to order and recording of a quorum. We do have a quorum. Councilman Valverde is absent. I think he had called in and notified us that he was going to be gone for an appointment. And we have Councilman Sellers that's not here as well. So those are the two that are not present, and the others, Councilman Sines, Councilman Lesea, and Councilman Burton are present. Okay, so we have an invocation and pledges of allegiance to the U.S. and Texas flags. Who wants to do the invocation? Anybody? All right. Okay. Okay. You okay with it? Okay.
Oh, Heavenly Father, we are gathered here today, form judgments and make decisions that will affect the lives of those into our charge. Please give us wisdom and understanding. Guide our decisions, may they be fair, just, and merciful.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one nation, indivisible.
Thank you, Councilman Burton. At this time, citizens who have filled out a registration form prior to the start of the meeting may speak on any topic they wish to bring to the attention of the governing body, so long as the topic is not on the agenda for this meeting. During the citizens to be heard section, no council action may take place and no council discussion or response is required to the speaker. Citizens who wish to speak on a specific agenda item when that item is called for discussion must fill out a registration form prior to the start of the meeting indicating which agenda item they wish to address. It seems we have here one from a Lamar Gillian, our citizen at 324 Glenarm. Mr. Gillian? Okay. The thing is, you signed up under citizens to be heard. Okay. All right. So we're going to go move right into the business items. It's been recommended by Councilman Sines that we move number 2 to number 1 to get that out of the way very quickly and then start working on the budget workshop. Is that correct, Councilman Sines? You're okay?
That is correct.
Okay. So let's move item number 2. We're moving it to item number 1. So we discuss and provide staff direction regarding the sealed bids collected for solid waste collection and disposal services and selection to award the contract. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. This item is basically back in the beginning of June. At Council's request, we put out an RFP to provide solid waste services to our citizens and both residential and commercial. Really triggered by a request by the existing provider for substantive or substantial increases. We received 5 responses. 1 was non-responsive. And so what you have basically in front of you is the 4 individual companies that provided responses. After reviewing all the numbers, I have listed the majority here. And the recommendation is to allow staff to negotiate with company B. The question I have for you is the 2 options that were requested was twice a week pickup of garbage and once per week pickup of recyclables. And also, 1 time per week pickup of garbage and 1 time per week pickup of recyclables. They did have the options to add others if they so choose, but those are really the two options that the council had requested. The numbers are pretty self-evident. The cost under B, for example, is $22.59 a month for twice a week pickup with once a week pickup recyclables, and $22.09 for once per week garbage and once per week recyclable pickup. They do add brush and bulky 2 times a year. The reason I have a question mark under 6 is because they did not add that number in. So that would be a part of the negotiation. It wouldn't be less than 6. The other is that hazardous waste, 1 pickup a year is included in the pricing. Whereas most other companies added either 5% or $1.05. And then you can see the breakout for commercial. The CFL is commercial front load. In the back, you see that I've added some definitions in the back on the bottom, so you can tell what that means. But I think overall, the company that is represented under B has one other city in the Metroplex or in the area. They're predominantly up north, but they want to make inroads. And my conversations with the gentleman was they really want the project. They really want the contract to make full use of the equipment they have here already, and also to be able to come into the market as well and be more competitive. They have, like I said, one other city. Everybody else has 1 or 2, but they really want to add to their cadre of cities that they provide services to. So with that, the ask is really to allow staff to move forward with negotiations with this company. The question to you is, do you want twice a week pickup with once a week recyclables, or once a week on both? And both will include 95 cart containers, even recyclable. And that's the same for all the companies. They came back, they want to do recyclable using a 95 cart container.
Any comments?
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Councilman Sines.
Does this include the quarterly neighborhood cleanup that we've been having?
Yes, sir. So if you
That
look,
before
if you
and
look
when?
down to number 6, complimentary 4 times a year neighborhood cleanup. So it's included. C obviously omitted it, but everybody else included it.
And would we be able to negotiate those dates? I think we had it right now, just set for the first Saturday of every quarter.
Yeah, we'll
Floating, so we don't have it on like July 4th weekend.
correct. I know. Yeah, that one was tied to the first Saturday, but we can certainly work with them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
What's the contract?
It's a 5-year contract with 2-year terms. So it would be a total of 9 if you want the full extent,
Mr. Burton, can you turn on your,
which is no
for the
different,
recording?
which is no different than what we have right now.
My big bugaboo, if you will, is I want more than 6 cubic feet of brush pickup. That's my thing that I would like to see. And
And that can be part of the negotiation, see how, if they're willing to go higher. Because there is one that is willing to go to 8 cubic feet. But, and there's actually one that was gonna do like a valet service. So if you call them, you can call them twice a year to pick up, but it's only 3 yards. So
right,
it wouldn't address your need.
that's a moot point.
But I can certainly bring that up with them.
Yeah, the city wants us to clean our properties up, yet they don't want to help us like before. I mean, you could put from end to end of your yard with waste management, and shy of there being a dead body in there, they'd pick it up. I mean, it was no trouble.
And you can see that everybody pretty much has the same number, even our surrounding cities. So I understand what you're saying. It's just, we'll talk. I can talk to them, but remember that the once a quarter pickup, neighborhood cleanup is also intended to address some of that. So hopefully we'll get to the point where people don't have, the need to put everything in, more stuff in front of their home.
And truly, not everybody puts out for brush pickup. I mean, if, and I couldn't understand, and I think Mr. Gillian, when he was on council, addressed it to maybe double it from the 6 to the 12 or something like that. When I spoke up at a city council meeting, I don't know if you remember that or not, but at any rate, not everybody puts out trash. And so if there's 4 people on my block that's putting out trash, why can't I?
So I'll tell you the answer there because I know it, and that is because they know that not everybody puts it out. So their pricing is based on the fact that you don't have 100% participation. So they can keep the prices lower, understanding that if everybody that puts out, it's not going to be, not even 25% of the population does it. So based on that, they come up with their pricing based on that. So if you add more, then that pricing will certainly be revisited. And so but I understand exactly what you're saying, and I can have a discussion with them to see if there's an opportunity to offset increased usage by one as opposed to another.
And then I guess they're going to be our only trash pickup. So we would transfer from what
Republic to the
Republic
next one.
and commercial would get new
Everybody.
cans. Everybody would get new cans.
Right.
That's
You yield? Okay. Anybody else? I have a few questions myself.
sir.
Is there a reason why we didn't get the RFPs in whole to each of us to study before?
Because that's up to me to look at that and review. The RFP is clear that they can't access or have access to you guys at all. So that there's no interference in the selection process. Once we get close, if you all want to see, if you all decide to move forward with the recommendation, I can certainly give you all an opportunity to look at the RFP, but a lot of that information is proprietary, so I can't provide it. But you can certainly look at it anytime if you want to. But it's really the big thing about the RFP is just the numbers. Everybody responded accordingly. I mean, they talk about their insurance and all that, which is what we require. And the only difference you'll see is the numbers, and the numbers are in here, so.
One of the things that I'd like to see for the citizens is the missed pickups when they have the previous provider that we had would miss a lot of pickups and they wouldn't notify us. They wouldn't tell us why they didn't show up that day. And so you would put your trash out and like just about everybody in the community put my trash out on the days scheduled. And you're depending that you're going to get that picked up, and then it doesn't get picked up, and then the next day it doesn't get picked up, then the next day, and sometimes they would skip it completely. I think I called you a few times prior to becoming mayor, and that was a concern that I had, that we can reassure ourselves with this new RFP people, or the new ones that we're looking at, specifically highlighted B, correct?
I'm sorry?
The B section is the one.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the yellow, in yellow, yeah.
Particularly if you're looking at that, that would be something to really stress on them to let us know
So,
the benefit of the citizens.
so if I may, part of the negotiation is going to be performance. And the performance will come with some type of a opportunity for us to be able to address any significant misses or failure to provide the service they're supposed to. And that's my intent, because the previous contract had nothing on performance. And so I want to make sure that we can hold their feet to the fire, so to speak, and possibly get something more out of them, maybe what you're talking about. But there's certainly ways to address performance and where we get additional services provided to us at no cost. But
Is the
as an incentive for them to perform.
Right, because if we're gonna sign a 9-year, so to speak, contract, basically.
It's 5-year. I
5
mean,
year.
like this one, we ended it in 5 because we chose not to address
Right.
the option because of the issues. So that's
I think you
that's a
mentioned
good
9,
thing.
didn't you? 9 years total?
Two.
It's 5-year contract with more than,
With
two options, right?
With two-year options.
Two 2-year options, so total potential of 9 years if we.
If they provide great service.
Right.
yes.
So there is an out there, and during the 5 years that we're with them. Right, and so the 5 years, you're gonna put that performance clause,
We can go ahead and start looking somewhere
Right.
else.
but you're referring to that 5-year clause. You'll have something in there that'll be sufficiently protected for the citizens.
Oh, yeah,
to be
yeah.
Able to get them to perform.
It'll be in the contract, so it will carry into the option years as well,
Do
so.
you have any idea what kind of like recourse you're gonna find to hold them feet to the fire, so to speak? If
There's examples that I've used in the past, so many misses in a given day, trigger a review of opportunities for us. But the bottom line is not how much I can get out of them, it's to make sure that they provide the service they're supposed to.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm.
So I know that right now, the issue with Republic was that they assumed the pickup days. So it didn't necessarily fit with their existing cities. So they always try to accommodate with us, whatever the days are. I mean, they already had a commitment somewhere else, so they were always sending somebody else. And so that was the biggest issue. I think that once I sit down with them, we will negotiate the dates of pickup to make sure that it fits their model. And because right now, what Republic had to do was fit us into their schedule. This way, we will create the schedule early. And they'll know that it's either Monday or if it's twice a week, Monday, Thursday, whatever the days are, they agree with them up front, and we'll move forward from there.
Okay, so just want to clarify, so you don't misunderstand what I said. I'm not trying to get more out of them. What I'm trying to do is just make sure the citizen.
Service.
Recourse.
That's why I
They're
said,
not stuck with that 5 years. And there's some way, we see, it's gonna be such an inconvenience for us as, the citizens, if they start underperforming like the other company did.
Right.
And then what recourse, because they're gonna have to now look for another provider.
and I did.
Another
and-
RFP and all that.
Yeah, and I did do some due diligence. I called the people here and I called the people up north, and they're all real happy with their performance. Like I said, because they only have one city here, they have the equipment here and it's idle most of the time because so they want to tap into the market and they want to make better use of their equipment. And the good thing is that they use a different landfill than most. Their landfill is on the west side, southwest side, whereas everybody goes southeast. And so it's not owned by the same company that picks up right now for us.
And you're saying it's proprietary, so you can't share the names with us, or?
I don't want to share the names right now, because we still have to negotiate an agreement. Once the agreement is negotiated, then I can release some of that information to you guys. Because in case this one doesn't work, then, we're gonna have to look for the next best, RFP response.
Yes, Councilman Burke.
So are you gonna attempt to negotiate the same days that we have existing?
I'm gonna try, because I don't know what days they use in the other city. And like I said, I don't want to compete with the days and then we end up in the same position where, if I don't finish over there and I'm next over here, what happens? There's only so many, and they only operate from 7 to 7. So I want to make sure that there's enough time there for us and not necessarily have to compete with another city's days. But I'll find out all that.
And again, without disclosing who they are, they're obviously a reputable company if they're able to get in.
Yes, they are.
Is there a customer service line that our citizens can call
That's
other than like Republic? They put you on ignore for,
I know, I've been there. No, I'm actually gonna ask for a name to be, for us and for citizens to have an actual person instead of just a company. So, and I know that the city here that they service, they have the name of a gentleman that they use. So that's their customer service rep.
and it'd be good if when they're passing out their cans or whatever. I know San Antonio, when at my other house, they gave you a new can, they have a little magnet that they stuck on there and you put it up and it said, you know, your trash days are this and this to remind
See
you.
how much marketing stuff they have, and
Yeah.
we can get all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Just to echo what everybody has said, I think this process has really changed, and the way Mr. Perales has been operating our new contracts have much more detail than what we've had in the past. So I think we're headed in a very good direction. So, thank you.
Lose hair every day. No, so I still need from you guys,
Mayor,
is it 2-1 or 1-1?
yeah, I just wanted to make a motion to approve or to accept the city's recommendation to use column B and to direct Mr. Frost to use the 2 times per week garbage pickup and 1 time per week recycle.
Okay, do we have a second to Councilman Sines' motion?
Second,
Councilman Lysia has second. All in favor? Any
Aye.
discussion? Wait a minute. Any discussion? Any more further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
So we have Councilman Sines, Councilman Lysia, and Councilman Burton, all aye on item number B as the approved entity. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. So we have the budget workshop for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025. I just want to say this for the record, that I wasn't too comfortable with the budget workshop being held at 1 p.m. today. I tend to find it, and I almost did not conduct this meeting. And I feel like we should cancel it and we should wait to have it at another time, at a more appropriate time, so that the citizens have an opportunity at 6 p.m., like our regular meetings, to attend. At 1 p.m., no one really has the opportunity to come and listen to this most important information that we're going to be discussing, particularly related to tax issues and other things that are in the budget. And I don't think that it's appropriate. I wish I would have been consulted. How did we come about having this meeting? Called it because, as my understanding of the rules, the mayor is the one that calls the meetings. And so, especially a special council meeting, called meeting. So I wasn't consulted. I just saw it posted on the agenda, and I just think it alienates the citizens from this process.
Okay, I'll respond to that. First of all, the information on these meetings was at the last council meeting. We provided that as part of your financial report with the dates and the times. The reason for this meeting being different than all others will be at 6 o'clock. The reason for this meeting being different is because this is your worst case scenario budget. No decisions will be made today. We're simply setting the foundation for the next meeting when we will have more concrete information to provide, where citizens can actually come in and provide their input, where council can give better direction and help us craft the final document. This is simply a foundation laying document that has worst case scenario numbers, because we have no numbers from BCAT, we have no numbers from our medical insurance company. Some of the numbers from TMRs are not complete. So we don't have the real impact for us. So what we're using is worst case scenario, but we wanted to set down the foundation so that you're familiar with the foundation. And then once the next meeting is called, which is at 6 o'clock, August 2nd, then at that point, it will be a full bore meeting for the budget. So today is simply just to let you know where we are and where we see some of the things where we're headed, and still instill some ideas for you to start thinking about for the next meeting. And that's why it's during the lunchtime.
Fully understood that. I was
Okay.
aware of it. I just didn't like the fact that it was at 1. I didn't have an opportunity because we were just so embroiled in the last council meeting that we didn't have an opportunity to address this. There were so many other things we were discussing. But even so, more so of a reason, because of the worst case scenarios that we're looking at proposed, and the foundation based off of that, not having the numbers to be able to compare to, it's important that the citizens would be more inclusive in this process, particularly at this very first fundamental startup. And we should have had it at 6 o'clock. And I would recommend right now that we just don't do this meeting right now and have it at 6 p.m. for the benefit of the community.
Like I said,
Show up.
there are no numbers to compare with.
I didn't say anything. I understood that.
Okay.
The part that I'm just concerned about is not giving be able to address this at 6 p.m. when they're available after work instead of 1 p.m. That's the only problem.
It's up to the council. I mean, you're the policy setters. This is simply a meeting, like I said, there was in your council meeting, agenda packet at the last council meeting. And, the dates are very clear in there and the times are very clear. And so we move forward with that.
Mayor, on July 2nd, I send you a draft agenda of this meeting.
Like I said, at the same time that you sent it, the time that we discussed it in the councilman, I felt the same way I do right now about it. But I think this was the appropriate time to address it in an open session so we can discuss it. And the citizens can see that it's to their benefit that the reason I'm doing what I'm requesting to do what I'm doing. 1 o'clock is extremely inconvenient for all of us on a day like this. And well, at least for me it is, for others as well. And so, but the main thing is the inconvenience to the citizens. If you really think about it, they don't have an opportunity to participate in this most important discussion that we're talking about. And it is to discuss these possible worst case scenarios. So I think they should have an opportunity to be able to address it.
If
Yes,
I may.
Councilman Sines.
Thank you, sir. So I disagree. Seeing how this is just very preliminary information, there's not a whole lot for the citizens to be engaged with. This is simply informational for us, that it gives us a baseline of what we could be facing going into August meeting, where where it will be at 6 p.m., where more citizens will be allowed to attend or have more availability to attend. So I think it would be important to have this meeting so we can just have that baseline information. So we can go in prepared in August. If the citizens have hard questions for us, we can actually have the information from Mr. Messick and Mr. Perales that way we can provide good data-based answers if the citizens have questions. Now, in the past, having attended city council meetings and been on city council during budget session, not very highly attended. So even at 6 p.m. So I think it would be important to continue this meeting. However, if you feel that strongly.
Respectfully, I do. I feel strongly about that. We'll talk. Go ahead, Councilman.
And I'm going to echo Mr. Sines. We do need to set up a foundation and we do need to be able to move forward. I think it would behoove us to try and accomplish what we're going to try to do today in a meeting with the public. We're not making decisions today. We're getting information to move forward with it. Now, earlier this month, we had a meeting that ran into way past midnight. If the citizens are not going to be able to vote and are going to have limited input, I don't see a difference with us continuing now and then present what we need to present. I think it's appropriate for us to gather this information to help us to move forward and just keep moving along and not delay. I understand it's inconvenient for some and for others it's not, but part of our responsibilities is to make ourselves available to be able to get the business of the city done. Thank you.
Well, that conflicts basically what you're saying, because you're saying we stay till 12. but it's conflicting with staying with right now that it's an obligation.
I'm saying we're not saying till
And I
midnight.
understand, I understand. But what I'm just trying to point that I'm making out to both of you, and I anticipated that both of you were going to say what you were going to say, is that you're missing the point. You're saying that even if you hold it at 6 PM, Councilman Sines said that, you know, more than likely more people will not be there. I think that's a moot point. Regardless of whether people come or not, you provide the opportunity for them to be here. And so if you're going to have the meeting at 6, if people show up or not, that's irrelevant. The fact is that we've given them the opportunity.
And we did, sir.
Excuse me, I'm still speaking.
I'm sorry, you addressed me directly, so I was responding.
Yeah, so no, well, I'm just referring to one of the comments you made. So I just think that for me, it's very uncomfortable to have a meeting right now about these important worst case scenarios, particularly with the taxing situations and all this other stuff that we're going to be discussing,
Well,
and not have the citizens with the opportunity to have involvement after 6 PM.
Can you get closer to your mic? I don't think
Sure.
it's picking it up.
So basically what I'm saying is I'm reiterating that on behalf of the citizens of Balcones Heights, I feel that they're being disenfranchised by having this meeting at 1 o'clock, where a lot of people are working till 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. They don't have the opportunity. And the most important points each and every one of you have made, to include Mr. Perales, is that it is to address the worst case scenarios that we're facing. Wouldn't you think that that is the most important thing that a citizen would like to hear and know about and be able to attend and provide input to? I do.
I
And
do have a
don't think
response,
at
but I
1
think
o'clock
Mr.
is-
Burton has.
I think Mr.
Yeah,
Burton
asking
had
to be
this.
And I don't
acknowledged.
think 1 o'clock is a good time. That's what I'm just trying to point I'm making. Councilman Burton, go ahead.
I agree. 6 o'clock would be a great time for them to get in. I would have liked to seen Sid Weiss up here too, and giving us some mall statistics to add into this but you know, even if we postpone this till a 6 o'clock position, I don't think it would get past the council votes. But I agree, 6 PM, you know, it's the good time for at least give them the opportunity to come up here and hear. I think I'm hoping that with our last meeting and stuff, that maybe people will become more engaged with the meetings. You know, Mr. Sines is 100% correctly. I've sat up here for budget meetings and crickets. And they're the ones that are coming back to me and going, you know, they're going, you know, why are my taxes going up? Why is this? Why is that? And I've done it to other council members. And but you know, we're spinning wheels right now. It's not going to pass a vote. I think you're right that 6 o'clock would be a good time, but let's delve in here that they've got other opportunities to come up at 6, and let's just
And that's just my
take the
whole point.
spoonful of medicine.
I'm not trying to be difficult or anything. I'm
Right,
just
Mr.
trying to bring
Messick
out
is
a
asking
point.
to be
Right,
acknowledged.
I saw him. Okay. So I'm not trying to be difficult. All I'm doing is just trying to bring out a point that I have a concern about. That's it. And in the past, that's all I've done. Just bring out points. So I'm not trying to shove it down your throat or anything. I'm just speaking on behalf of the citizens and say, let's give them an opportunity, better opportunity at 16. Okay, Mr. Floyd, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. Traditionally, we're talking tradition here. We've always held the first one at lunchtime, so I think that was part of it. But can we do it at 6:30? We have plenty of wiggle room in the budget. If you want to reschedule this again for 2 weeks at 6:30 or 6 o'clock, I'm sorry, then we can certainly do so. But I also think, aren't we putting this on our website as well for residents to look at any time they want to?
Right, but you know, work, Mr. Messick, the whole point is 6 PM is better, conducive for the community. And, you know, we have to get past the point about whether they're going to be here or not. It's giving them the opportunity. That's it. Giving them the opportunity so that they have a very open, transparent meeting that they can attend to. And if they show up, they show up. If they don't, then they don't. But we've done our job by at least having it that time to make it more conducive. And traditionally doesn't make it right for me. It just means that it's just traditionally. A lot of things are going to change that we have to make differences to. So that's it.
No,
Okay.
I agree. I mean, I think, point well taken, in the future, everything will be in the evening, just to accommodate everybody else.
Right.
And that's good.
I'm willing to participate. I mean, I could easily walk out and say, I'm not going
Okay. Okay.
to walk away like, it's been done in the past. I'm not going to do that. I'll participate, with my input and everything. I just want to make sure you understood what I felt. That's it. Okay.
Yeah, I do feel it's important to continue today, as you
Okay.
stated
Yeah.
several times during the meeting on
with you.
last council meeting, that time's of the essence,
Yes,
right?
sir.
If we don't do anything now, then we're losing at least 2 weeks,
Okay,
maybe 30 days.
so let's get on business. Let's get down to business.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we're moving forward?
Yes, sir. Let's
Okay,
move
let's
forward.
do it.
Let's move forward. Okay, so we're gonna go to the budget workshop and who is going to begin? Mr. Morales?
I'm just gonna reiterate some of the stuff
Okay.
that we talked about last year, and I apologize, you don't have a copy of this because I just finished it this morning. But it's just, I just want to give you an update of where we started last year. Some of the efforts that we took care of this year. And just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we've done this year to help achieve some sustainability financially. Just a reminder, some of the challenges is that the city's photo enforced red light camera contract ended on the 24th of May of this year. The annualized financial impact is approximately 450,000, and we will realize it completely in 2025. The association's contract included provisions that resulted in unintended financial impacts associated with each. The city purchased 45.7% interest ownership in WODA, and we have none of the anticipated windfall has materialized. Some of the proposed steps that we took to mitigate the reduction of red light camera. We terminated the warrant officer contract. We talked about dispatch, outsourcing dispatch. And we furloughed the position that was created to handle the red light camera. So the savings on the first one and the last one are approximately 225,000. The anticipated savings on dispatch, which is still a recommendation unless the council decides to do otherwise, is approximately $150,000 to $200,000. Sir.
You want to handle these one? Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor,
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman Burton. I'm sorry.
go back to the warrant officer. Just ballpark it for me, since we're talking ballparks anyway. What was he bringing in? Was he bringing in 125 in fines?
It depends on how you see it. So the contract itself was written in such a way where it was a benefit for the warrant officer. I already had a company that does that.
Is that the Limburger?
Yeah, Limebarger. And so they created a window of opportunity for him by keeping Limebarger away until he addressed some of this stuff. He's not an officer, has no arrest powers, has none of that stuff. So he's basically just an information provider. Your warrant's about ready to, your ticket's about ready to go to warrant. You need to come down. They would come down. Nobody almost always gets only one ticket when you get stopped. So each ticket carried a $50 price tag. So if you walk in with 5 tickets, you're guaranteed $250 right off the top. You go to the judge dismisses 2, asks you what you think. And as a warrant officer had influence on the remaining 3, whether they get dismissed, reduced. You already collected his $250, and then, I end up collecting what's left. Of that, 40% has to go to the state automatically. I mean, no choice. That's what the state collects. So by the time you pay the judge, the prosecutor, and you end up getting a lot less than what you think. So it made sense for us to go in a different direction. As a matter of fact, our collections are much greater now, because Limeberger adds a fee as opposed to charge us. So they add a fee to the ticket, they get it off the top, and we get the full brunt, except for the 40% that goes to the state,
They're not just doing red light camera tickets. They're doing
everything.
everything.
And red light camera tickets are no longer in effect, so everything on June 24th, everything stopped completely. So if you have an outstanding an outstanding red light camera ticket, you can keep it in your pocket. We're not collecting anymore. We're not doing anything else anymore.
What else was there? Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but
No, you're fine.
Thank
No, I'm glad. That's a good question.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Okay. Next item. Okay, so then, under the agreement for police, we moved the salary structure. And by moving the salary structure, you had, unintended consequences of moving a bunch of employees up in salary in order to protect seniority and pay. Another provision, eliminated compensatory time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perales, repeat that again? The salary structure adjustments to maintain regional competitiveness?
So when you move the pay structure, you move it from, I'll pick some numbers. If the pay structure for police officer is 50 to 100,000, and I move the pay structure, you move it completely. So you move it from 50 to 100 to 60 to 110. So if you're at the $50,000 salary, I have to move you automatically to 60 because I can't hire somebody at 60 and keep you at 50. So you've got to protect that. And so if there's a number of incumbents in that structure, there's a ripple effect. You have to move everybody the same because you're also protecting seniority, and that's how they measure seniority. So all that happened, and it had an impact. And so that's why I'm saying that unintended, but it happened. But it happens everywhere. Whenever you do salary structure adjustments, it happens to everybody in any city.
Councilman Burton?
so then why was the reason for the salary structure?
Because we do salary surveys every 3 years. And then now, so I've talked to Floyd.
Mr. Perales, sorry,
Excuse
may I?
me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
May I?
Still has the floor.
Well, I have a point of clarification for
You
Mr.
yield,
Burton.
Jack, you want to yield to him?
Yes, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
All right, thank you. So that 3-year review is actually required by the Police Officer Association contract. So we have to do that. So every 3 years, Mr. Messick goes and does a compensation analysis for police officers, actually for everybody, right? And ensures that we are at market rate. So that's not something that we do just because it's a requirement by contract.
Well, and I understand that. But it's
Councilman, you yield?
I understand that, but at some point, you're going to be paying out more than we're bringing in.
So
And I had firefighters talking at me from across the room, and they brought in an extra guy and stuff, telling me about how we're going to freeze their salaries or whatever. If they want to go to San Antonio, from the time they sign on till the time they leave that day, they're going to be working. And same with PD. They're going to take calls all day. It's not like Balcones Heights where you're only working a 1 mile city, so I get that too. And we want to cut other places. And it's hard with the PD because they have that collective bargaining. We need to get rid of that thing.
okay, but I mean that's entirely.
I mean, I'll be the dartboard for you. If I've already put my foot in my mouth, so I'll be the dartboard. But it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
So the structure, the reason you do a pay review is for starting pay. That's the big thing, is starting pay. It's not necessarily everybody else. So I don't go in and say, Officer X, you've been here 7 years, you should get this. No, it's typically starting pay. That's your biggest issue in any city, is starting pay. That's where competitiveness comes in. But as a as a city manager, I would never say starting pay is the most important thing. No, it's compensation, total compensation. You've got to look at total compensation, not just pay. And so when you start looking at things as compensation, you've got to consider the number of days of holidays, how much vacation and sick leave you accumulate. All those things should come into play. They should never just be salaries. I'll tell you that right now. I talked to Floyd when you guys get ready, because the thing about the 3 years, it has to be an agreement between both parties. It's not just the police department wants to open it up and we're gonna do it. No. The police department makes the request to open the contract up again to review salaries. The city has to agree to do that. And if you agree to do that, then you're well within your rights to ask for something back. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So that's entirely up to you guys, what you want to do and how far you want to take it. But if you want to look at salary structure, I'm going to tell you what we did one year. We were looking at the same thing, staring at the same thing, same issues. And so what we decided to do is eliminate the first step and everybody starts the second step. That's it. You don't move anything else. So there's options out there. It's not just a simple, let's move the whole salary structure up. I could just take out the first salary, step one, and start everybody at step two. And that's how you address stuff like that, so that it doesn't affect you. And there's no ripple effect after that.
And I keep hearing about this mystery city that we compare to. Who is it?
No, there's 10 cities and it's not San Antonio.
Well, okay. Well, who are they? I'm asking you who
I'll get you the names. I mean, but it's, yeah, Castle Hill, Shadow Park.
not comparable to us, way not comparable to us. Their homes there are much.
So,
Oh, you said Alum Heights or Castle Hill? Not comparable. Chavano, not comparable.
so you have to do the best you can. Now, remember.
He's in there smiling at me, so I think he's itching for something to say, but.
So remember that, it's not, you try to compare as best you can with what's around you because that's who you're competing with. So you take advantage of that. You leave out San Antonio completely. You look at the outliers and you get rid of those. And so you stick with what's in the middle. I can't go up north and compare because I can't.
There
I
is
can't
no comparison.
So I'm saying is, so you take the average of the 10 and that's what you try and do. And then you look at your total compensation package and you determine from there where you want to end up and what makes sense to the city. So you'll never find a comparable one because there isn't one.
There you go.
There is no Balcones Heights. So I'll tell you that one of the biggest things that I know we always say 0.7 square miles, 3,000 people. Don't do that because you've got 77,000 cars that come through this city every day. And with that comes needs to address infrastructure for somebody else that uses your streets. You have crime that runs rampant. And I guarantee you that every time we stop somebody, they don't have a Balcones Heights address. So you have, unfortunately, because of location, you're a magnet for all that stuff. And it's not our stuff, but we have to address it because we are the cops within our boundaries. And the expectation, like everybody else, we don't cross over to San Antonio unless they ask us. They don't cross over in here, even though it's theirs. And we're dealing with their crime. And it's just because criminals don't know boundaries. And so we have a magnet out here that attracts the criminal element. Smash and grabs. I mean, they happen all the time. Run into a store, run out and leave because of the easy access to the freeway. Come in, smash and grab, go out. And you're on the freeway again. So we unfortunately have to deal with that. When we have talked to cities about dispatch, our workload is much, much greater than those cities because of what we deal with on a daily basis. We deal with issues that are found in bigger cities. And so but that's us. That's who we are. And so we have to address, we have more officers than this small town next to Dripping Springs that has 12,000 population. We have more officers than them, but we have more activity than they do, a lot more activity. And so when we've gone to talk to these folks, you know, we almost triple what they do. And that's just the nature of our location. Location. In this case, it's a negative impact, but we have to deal with it.
Mr. Perales, if you can, Mr. Burton, you want to continue? I'm just going to interrupt, just say, could you provide those statistics to us? The ones you just stated. There is 3 times the amount of crime here in Balcones, more compared to the other communities that you just mentioned. Could you provide those statistics for us?
We can get something.
Okay,
yeah.
compile those statistics and show us that way the council has a better understanding as to what it takes to do that.
Sure.
So for the note, Councilman Sellers has just arrived, and so now we have him part of the council meeting.
Okay.
Time is it's 12:52, and he just arrived. The note. Yeah, so if you can, just
Okay, yeah,
provide those statistics.
we'll get that information for you.
Just to substantiate what you're saying. Go ahead, Councilman Burton, you still have the floor. Okay, anybody else?
Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, you can skip this one. And then the other thing we did was,
Oh, no, he's just telling you that that's an action that would took place in the council meeting.
so let me just, on this one real quick, we went from 4 option offerings on health to 2. And the savings that we realized were much greater than we anticipated. So that was a good move on our part. Finally, next.
Oh, can
We-
you bring
we
that
did-
back? That slide real quick, I was finishing up on. There you go. Okay, yeah, that's what I saw there. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then finally, we insourced janitorial. We're paying about 65,000 for one building by hiring a part-time at council's authorization. And the cost for supplies, we save about $30,000 on that contract. And then the one thing that we did at the fire department, we converted the pickup truck to a rapid response vehicle so that that vehicle responds to minor issues and you don't pull out the big trucks all the time because of the continuing increases in maintenance costs. And I just wanted to give you that as a precursor to Floyd's 79 pages of information that he's going to provide. Just kidding, it's not 79. But unless anybody has any questions, and I'll talk to you about that document that you have in your hand, the one with the yellow stripe, just the other one. Yeah, afterwards. So I'll hand it over to Floyd, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Perales, for setting the stage for us. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first budget workshop for the FY25 fiscal year. This workshop kicks off the FY25 budget cycle, and it culminates on September 23rd when we will hopefully pass a balanced budget for you. We do have 2 other workshops scheduled on our budget calendar, but there's plenty of wiggle room in there if you need more. This is just the first one. And there's not 79 slides, it's only 500, so, or sorry, 50. Next slide, there we go. So we do have 50 slides to present today. We'll spend some time, we'll just blow through some of them rather quickly unless you have questions, but you also have a line item budget that was handed out. We start with a line item budget and then we build the slides off of that. And a lot of that's built on estimates. That's important. But today we're going to look at the total budget real fast. Of course, the general fund is your most prominent fund, your most important one. We'll spend a little more time on that. A lot of cities don't include the capital budget in their budgets, but for transparency, we do. Other funds we'll look at, there's special revenue funds and there's proprietary funds. And then we'll go over basic tax rate. It's too early to really show tax numbers, but we do have a presentation pretty much based on last year's numbers that we'll look at. Okay, just going right to the overview. The budget that we have today is often considered the doom and gloom budget or the worst case scenario budget, as Mr. Perales stated. And it's primarily because we're early into the season. A lot of the estimates on numbers were from the spring. So a lot of those are going to change. We also use conservative budgeting. And so a way to think about that is if I think an expense could be $1 million or it could be $2 million, we budget the $2 million initially until we know it's going to be lower. But it's opposite on the revenues. If we think, well, the budget revenue could be $1 million or it could be $2 million, we budget $1 million initially, and that creates that large deficit that has to be filled. But as we go over the summer, we find out that, yeah, it's pretty close actually, and we actually have a balanced budget. Last year, we started out at about $570,000 deficit. This year is looking about the same. The general fund currently reflects a deficit of $411,000. That's as of today. That's our basic starting point budget. There is deficit spending, of course, in the general fund, but also for special revenue funds, and we'll look at those later. The proposed tax rate in the budget that you have remains unchanged until we're told otherwise to increase it or decrease it. Payroll costs, as we have them now, are $5.665 million. That's an increase of 1.4%, and that's usually it's usually higher than that. It's pretty low this year. What helped there is we eliminated the economic development director position for a savings. Also during this year, we downgraded or we did away with the maintenance supervisor position and made that a maintenance position instead. And one of the police positions was downgraded. We also had a lot of turnover and vacancies, and so that's going to carry payroll costs forward or savings as well. What's included in payroll? We include all scheduled steps for all employees at this point. We include an estimated 3.3% COLA for all employees. So the COLA that is part of the association agreement, of course, and it's based on what the November number is. Of course, we'll budget for the July, looking in forward to what the, that November number might be. And so that might go up or down. Probably I'm banking on that it's going down recently. It has been. We'll look at city debt payments. That total city debt, $590,000. 190,000 of that is backed by property taxes. We can increase our INS rating for that. The other 400,000 is the WODA loan, and we can't throw that into the INS. So total city debt, 590. We'll look at that. Capital fund expenditures are down this year, 654,000. 500 of it is road construction and 150 for capital equipment. If you have any questions or need clarity, please stop me. If not, I'll just keep on going.
Go back, please.
Mhm.
I have a couple of questions regarding this payroll cost. So you're at 5,665,000 and change, 398. What is the 1.4% amount to?
That is yeah, okay. So that's a 1.4% increase over what was budgeted last year,
How much is that amount?
minus 1.4%.
So just multiply 1.4 times the 5,668,398.
Yeah, I got it. I can.
Mr. Messer, you'll go into detail on that in a few slides, correct?
Yeah, we have that, but I mean, he asked, it's in here somewhere.
Mr. Science, just please follow the parliamentary procedure. Just ask for recognition. Recognize you to speak.
It's a couple slides away, but. So 5,588,569, add 1.4, it's 5,665,000 for next year.
So 5,665,000 is the increase? The difference you have to, so then you just subtract that from the 5,665,398. I mean,
It's a 1.4% increase. That dollar value is $78,829.
78 what? 78 what, Mr. Floyd?
829.
839.
829, but it's, yeah, a couple slides.
78,839. Okay. And on the COLA, the 3.3% COLA for all employees, That was an issue that we discussed in the last meeting. And I think somebody had mentioned of the employees, it's not very much. It's something that we need. What does that amount to, the 3.3% COLA?
Mhm.
Is that cost us?
Yeah, so 3.3% COLA for all staff. Overall cost for that would be 145,000. 46,000 for the police and 99,000 for the remaining staff.
145,000?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
And then you mentioned the other number is what?
Yeah, so breaking it out by police, since they have to get the full COLA,
Correct.
that would be 46,500, and the staff, 99,000.
And that totals the 145 that you gave me, correct?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
46.5 staff. All right, thank you.
This presentation does cover the total budget, which is the city's general fund, the primary fund. We do include the capital fund, 16 special revenue funds, and 2 proprietary funds. That would be your sewer and stormwater. Looking at total budget revenues at this point in time, and keep in mind this will change. But what we have right now is roughly 8.8 million. The biggest revenue source here is total taxes. That's 62% of your total budget. And that includes your sales tax, property tax, hotel tax, and mixed beverage taxes. Currently, what we're budgeting with our sales tax is a 2% increase. And again, that's conservative. That number will probably go up as we go across the summer and sales tax holds. Fine revenues decreased. So this whole budget is down $1.8 million over last year, primarily because of losing the red light camera program. That was bringing in $1 million gross roughly every year. Not that we could use all of that, but that's would be included in your total budget revenues. We also do not include the sweep that will take place in March. It is in the 24 budget for comparison, but we won't know that number until March after the audit. And so that's making that deficit look bigger than what it is as well, because that was 544,000. And also we have less capital revenue going into the capital fund this year. The capital fund fluctuates year to year. Some years that's a lot of money and some years not so much. And the projects, of course, go over multiple years. So that's the reason why you have a decrease in budget revenues at this point. Any questions on that?
So you mentioned the 1.8 million a year. Did you reference that to the red light cameras? Did I hear that?
Revenue this year versus last year is down $1.8 million. And $1 million of that was because we record the gross red light camera revenue.
We were averaging about $1 million or so.
Gross, yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about that later, how that's calculated, but a lot of that went to the vendor. A lot of that goes to the state, and their portion of it really is only about 450,000 a year. Budget expenses. Again, this drops about $2 million, and a large portion of that was the $1 million from the red light camera, paying the vendors and paying the personnel that was in that fund. Personnel costs are the largest expense category, and personnel costs this year are located within 4 funds, with the general fund containing the most of them, 81%. And we're fixing to go into that in a second. City debt payments, we've already said about 590,000, 400,000 of it is WODA. The other is taxpayer or tax backed debt. Okay, and so going into payroll, personnel costs, this is by fund. We're going to look at it by function here in a minute as well. We've highlighted traffic safety program there in the middle because that's what's going away. The equivalent salaries or estimated payroll going into or being funded by the traffic safety fund was roughly 361,000. So all that is now moved over to your general fund. And so you see that general fund number up there increased quite a bit by about 9.1%. And that's because of the movement into from the traffic safety fund. The traffic safety fund also paid for highway lighting, so that went into the general fund, but that's not payroll. Otherwise, things pretty much remain the same with hotel, court security, and we've already talked about crime control. We passed that budget last month, and that's exactly what was presented last month there for payroll. Personnel levels, the EDC director position was removed this year going into 25. And the three full-time equivalent positions from the traffic safety fund was moved to the general fund. And again, there we do have the scheduled step increases and the 3.3% COLA that make up this. Medical costs are still to be determined. We think we'll see some payroll savings with that. This looks at the same numbers, but it looks at it by function. What are people doing? What are we paying for? And so these are the total personnel costs that to provide all the city services that we provide: public safety board, public works, administrative services. Public safety would be police, fire, and dispatch, and they account for 76% of total payroll expenses. 3.4 million of that cost is actually in the general fund. Public safety, the last bullet here is saying public safety accounts for 46 payroll positions, administrative, 5.5 plus 6. And then community development, public works would be 5, and then court would be 4. Okay, total debt. And so we break out total debt by the 3 debts that we had talked about earlier. Up top is our WODA debt. The original loan amount, our FY25 balance, our annual payments are going to be around $400,000 each year. We make 4 quarterly payments of $100,000 on this loan. It is not backed by taxpayer debt. It is supposedly paid in the EDC, and that's where it's paid. But the general fund picks up the cash portion of it, and the expenses are recorded in the EDC. Your other 2 are tax notes. It says series. Anything with series in front of it's going to be a tax note. We did a tax note for the fire truck. 2021, we did a tax note for Vivian construction in 2020. The fire truck there will end in FY26. Vivian's last payment is in this budget. That's coming up in FY25. Some of these notes are callable, some aren't. But with the interest rate environments that we have now, and the fact that some of the loans are almost done and some of them are brand new, we wouldn't want to call or refinance anything at this point. Any questions on that?
So 2021, we purchased a new fire truck. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Mr. Burton, go ahead.
So 2021, we purchased a new fire truck. We sold an old fire truck. Did that go towards the down payment, let's say, or
Yeah,
or did it just evaporate into the general fund?
yeah, correct, sir. When we do debt, we're going to ask for an amount, whatever that is. And so that's what we asked for, was the purchase. And so I don't know what happened with the fire truck at the time, but if we did sell it, yes, sir, it would have gone to the general fund.
Okay. I was unaware that Vivian, I thought we did a CDBG match with that. Do we owe on Pleasant too coming up? Are we going to owe on Pleasant? And are we going to owe on
Okay, Pleasant.
phase 1 of Crestview?
Okay, Pleasant's done. That's been completed. I wasn't here when we did a tax note on that. Maybe COVID played a part in that, but with Crestview, no, we're paying it out of the capital fund. So there's no tax notes for any of that.
And when will Vivian be done?
Last payment for Vivian, it says it's going to be next year. So we got one more payment of 74,000,
Oh, 5.
and then it comes off the books after next year. Yes, sir.
And one of the things I'd like to see in the future is a representative from Wonderland of the Americas up here to enlighten us on, why we're not meeting our expectations on sales tax and stuff up there. They don't have a problem holding their hand out for escalators, so let's get someone over here and ask, we need sales tax generating businesses up there, and all the ones that are up there hospitals, lawyers, whatever the case may be, are not sales tax driven, and they take up a footprint of the mall. And you can't get people in here if that footprint is occupied. So we need to have a heart to heart or have an exit strategy. And let's get this thing off the books or make some money, one of the two.
So one of the good things about being part owner is that we have been able to steer the property manager into bringing in sales tax generating businesses. So the idea of occupancy, addressing occupancy with anything stopped. So now we're moving forward. You see WSS, Five Below is coming, Dazel's the next one. You have AR Entertainment, they generate tax. They also have liquor tax associated with them. So we've tried to stay away from the non-generating sales tax businesses. There is another component to the hospital that's coming in, and that's because there's already an existing place for them that's set up for them, and I guess that's fine. But I think that the majority of the effort now is to generate sales tax. I agree that that there still needs to be a concerted effort by this group and the EDC to look at exit strategies. Uh, I don't know what those are or what they look like, but I think that certainly moving in that direction is the best way to go. So I don't disagree with you. You had the gentleman here that is the managing partner at the last meeting, and the problem that you have is that uh, there's just a habit of doing things that don't behoove us. And I can't do anything about that. None of us can. There's contractual obligations, but I think that there's opportunity. There's opportunity there to seek that exit strategy. Because I agree. I mean, this is long term. It's not financially feasible for the city to continue in this direction. I don't know that bringing him here will do anything. Trust me. I think that's a discussion. I know we're going to have a meeting with the partners. That's a discussion for the partnership, and the partnership has to agree to move in a different direction.
Yes, Jack, you yield or you still? got
Well,
something?
either way, I mean, whether we're involved in this note to pay off or whether we withdraw, they're still a vital part, because if they don't generate any sales tax, either way, we're not going to make any difference in any of these numbers. So it would really help the city if he could understand the seriousness of his actions by non-sales tax generating business. I get what he's doing. He wants the rent, but that doesn't help us. And long-term, it just, we're digging ourselves deeper in the hole. And I don't know if there is an way to exit out of that contract. I wasn't involved on council then. I highly recommended against it. And I saw it as a brick and mortar. That's a lose-lose situation. And of course, the one person who was pushing for it, I said would not be here when chips come to fall, and he's not here. And you're suffering the consequences of it, unfortunately. And it's not sustainable. And I'm giving that warning on salaries too. Don't look at me like I'm bearer of bad news. It's true. And I'm seeing down the future, and either way, you're going to be working for San Antonio. Because if you leave us, you're probably going to go to San Antonio or whatever. If we get incorporated, you're going to be working for San Antonio anyway. And I guarantee you, they're not going to keep this place open and that fireplace open over there. They're going to use, was it 19s and 20s? Is it 27s? or I'll say Westfall Branch and Bandera and Hillcrest. Those will become our fire stations. So I don't think they would keep this fire station open. So it would behoove us, using that terminology, to light the fire under SID and at least try to make some money. I would rather make money than not make any money off of it. I'm done. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, Councilman Burton, you yield?
I just-
Councilman Sellers?
I just have a question. Are any of these loans involved a balloon note?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sellers, the WODA loan, it's up here on the slide. So the payments are made quarterly. The loan term is 10 years. However, the final payment of $3.3 million is due in FY 31, at which point we will renegotiate, obviously, or maybe we'll have the money to pay it off. I don't know, but we'll probably renegotiate that for longer term and lower payments.
So basically, we're trying to make payments now by cutting back, but it's only going to get worse as the balloon note increases.
The payments are going to stay the same every year at 400,000, but at the end of 10 years, yes, 3.3 is due. And so at that point, that's when you got to, go into another loan for hopefully a longer term and cheaper rates. Yes, sir.
On the date that you said for the 10 years was when? The maturity on the balloon?
First, FY 31.
31.
Yes, sir.
I think I saw that in the budget. And the 400K that David was referring to, Mr. Sellers was referring to, right now, what's happening, Mr. Sellers, is the general fund has had to pay for that. And so that's why it's stressed the way it is. Okay, thank you, Mr. Messer. Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Mr. Burton, thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, can we go back to the other slide just real fast? And so if you notice what we're doing with our tax notes here is we're staggering them so that one comes off the books that frees up money for potentially something else. And then another one down the road will come off the books, freeing up money for something else. And that's a pretty good strategy to keeping debt on the books, especially if you need it, obviously, because that doesn't affect your INS portion or your tax rate. If you have debt that's falling off, well, then your INS drops to zero. You can drop your tax rate, but then next year, wait a minute, well, now we got to go with more debt. And so that's going to crank up your INS, lower your M&O. So to kind of keep that level, we'd like to see debt fall off the books and new debt come on the books. So we kind of time it that way. We're not creating debt, but if we can stagger it that way. And so that leads to the next slide, because we got to have the Hillcrest discussion at some point. So this is what the debt timeline is. This is what we're trying to line up here. We have the Vivian Street Project tax note ending in FY 2025. Should we go ahead with the Hillcrest, then we would start our first bond payments in FY 26. And you can see that it's roughly the same amount. We would drop 74,000 off the books and pick up roughly 80,000 based on today's terms, maybe less if interest rates go down. But it's just basically substituting one debt for the other without really affecting your tax rate. In FY 26, we see the fire truck drop off, and that's going to save you 116,000. But if we do go forward with Hillcrest, then we're going to need a significantly bigger chunk of money in 27, because that's when the construction kicks in. And so there you're looking at a $3 million bond with payback terms of 240,000 a year. So that's almost doubling what you would be paying, but it's a way of stepping up the debt. And of course, all this assumes that we will go ahead with Hillcrest. I know we had discussed last year, May 25 is the next time that would be good to call for a citizens election or citizens vote, I'm sorry, if they want to go ahead and issue debt with this. And so if citizens approve it, we don't have to go get the debt immediately. We could get the debt as needed. We have plenty of time to space that out if need be. But it's good to get their approval up front. Obviously, if they kill it, then there's no sense in we would have to kill the project. But either way, Hillcrest, based on the pavement index report, it's got to be fixed at some point. Right now, we're working with MPO and TxDOT. It's $10–11 million, city portion, $4 or $5 million. If that gets killed, then we still got to fix Hillcrest. city's portion, $4 to $5 million either way. But with that, I yield to Mr. Burton.
Councilman Burton, go ahead.
I guess this is more of a Gilbert question. What are the chances of San Antonio doing their portion? Why are we kicking in to do their portion?
My recommendation, with staff and my recommendation to you would be to scale back completely. I don't know that San Antonio would, I met with the councilwoman, over the area. And unfortunately, we own everything, including the sidewalk on the north end of Hillcrest. So they basically don't have any right of way there. And my concern is, if you look at the numbers, you know, and then my concern is that you're basically building a street for somebody else. I really do think that my recommendation would be for you to suspend we didn't get the money through the MPO. I think this is federal funds or TxDOT funds, and which required us to add components to the construction that inflated the price. One of those components is a 10-foot trail from here to Babcock. And so that cost for right-of-way purchase is going to be enormous. And you know, I hate to say this, but you know, Bridge to Nowhere, it's a trail that's 10 foot on the south side of Hillcrest. My concern is the cost for basically a street that our residents mostly avoid because of the traffic. And but that's a call that you have to make. The issue we have is that pretty soon TxDOT will require us to start buying properties, and I don't know that we should be in the business of buying property right now. We don't really know whether or not we can afford to move forward with this.
What's the alternative what's the Band-Aid approach?
So the alternative would be for the city to get with with all the players. So get with VIA representatives, get with Berry County representatives, get with City of San Antonio representatives, and find a solution for Hillcrest. Like I said, I don't really fancy us moving forward with building a street for somebody else. And when I can go to Shady View and under CDBG, apply for a grant there and get, you know, 3/4 paid by somebody else, and we're only on the hook for, you know, 300,000 or 400,000 as opposed to 4 or 5 million. But have a real engaged meeting with those entities. Because the biggest thing, I mean, we can continue to fix potholes and things like that. The street will continue to deteriorate. And I think that the majority of the complaints will go to City Hall over there, not City Hall here, because of who's using the street. And so, but that, like I said, you know, that's certainly a decision that you guys have to make. Because I know a lot of effort and money has been spent on the street already. And so I don't know that, I'm not going to make the call. I'm simply going to recommend that you take a real hard look at possibly just pausing the whole construction for the reasons that we're talking about.
Councilman, you? Anybody else? Wait, Mr.
So Mayor and Council, I would point out with this, unless things have changed, this street would not be eligible for a CDBG loan, as it is a thoroughfare, not a residential street. Also, in MPO's mind, if we push this back, they're happy with that. They would rather push it back than move it up. But still, the election really could just determine everything for you. If the residents say, no, we're done with it, then it's done with. But if they say yes, then maybe we do, maybe we don't. So again, just something else to consider with that.
Who's our point of contact, Mr. Perales, over at the city of San Antonio for that? Public Works for the street? So is that who you've been corresponding with, or you haven't corresponded? Oh, okay. I was under the impression you were communicating. Okay,
The only person I spoke with was the councilwoman over this area, over this district, Alerete Govina. And talked to her about possibly paying some portion of it, even if it was just a sidewalk. And the other part was this auto junkyard that's sort of been built right here on the north side of Hillcrest.
the old Porsche dealership.
Yeah, so if you look at Google Maps, it's a junkyard. And so my biggest concern with them, because it's in the city of San Antonio, is that the runoff takes it to our creeks. And so that's my concern, if there's any environmental issues happening there, like they always happen, those establishments, that we suffer the consequences of having all that stuff coming through our drainage facilities. But she's the only one I've ever talked to. Thing, like a 20-minute talk and get out of my office.
How long ago was this?
How long?
Yeah, no, how long ago? Term, a
like
year, 6 years,
6
10
months?
years?
No, no,
I know, I'm
no.
just kidding. Add a little light to it.
6 months
6
and,
months ago.
and no, a call back in sense of,
Okay. All righty.
And-
Yes, Councilman Burton?
You know, and we just passed a telecom text with VIA. And they have no trouble coming up to us for money, but I know in the past, they've not wanted to do anything with the damage to our streets that their buses cause. And you can see that down on Hillcrest, by Shady View, where the cement pad is, the damage is right before the cement pad because they're applying their brakes and hitting that cement pad, and that asphalt just pushes up. I mean, you don't have to be an engineer to understand that.
Okay. Mr. Messi, oh, I was going to say, we can move on to the
to
next
make
one.
one more point, in reference in VIA is that part of the design for the street includes cutoffs for VIA buses. So there's an advantage for them, you know, that we do this because it's to avoid the traffic backups. They just cut in and allow the bus to go in and the traffic can just pass by. So there's an advantage for them off of this project now. I'm not recommending that we pursue the project as it's written. I'm simply saying that there's got to be an opportunity there for all heads to get together and address an issue that is not necessarily created by our residents. Because I guarantee you, even people in this building refuse to exit there. They go out on Gentleman and go south and then come out somewhere out there.
Go ahead, Mr. Messi.
Okay, and now we turn our attention to the general fund, which is the city's primary premier fund. And as you can tell by the picture, finance uses the latest, greatest cutting edge technology to bring you a balanced budget every year. I had to throw that picture in there. It looked like my grandson did about 10 years ago when he had the Coke bottles and the little tie and the abacus. So, okay. General fund revenues, 5.4 million, 5.5, yeah. Just a little bit of an increase of $8,000. So it's virtually the same revenue wise as what we had last year. The thing to point out though, at this early point in the game, of course, that number will change. But if you look at the categories of revenues here, it's usually the thirds principle that we talk about. 1/3 of your revenue comes from sales taxes, 1/3 from property taxes, 1/3 from others. So right now, 75% of general fund revenues come from the taxes, of course, and the other would be from the other sources. Right now, we are looking at just a 2% increase of sales taxes over last year, and property taxes 2%. Of course, that's going to go up a little bit as long as sales tax holds out. Property taxes, we'll get into that a little bit further, but right now we're seeing about a 3.5% increase over valuations from last year. And remember, last year it was a 12.5% increase. It was a pretty big increase for everybody. So a little bit lower this year, but that also affects revenue. On general fund expenses side, that's a big number. Of course, it went up this year. Personnel is 80% of your general fund personnel costs. Of course, that went up as we had to include the traffic safety stuff in there as well. But it's a big chunk. General fund expenses so far have decreased $145,000. And that's due primarily because, like we were talking about the sweep, it's not recorded yet. The budget will be amended in March to reflect that, and that will increase the expenses, more depending on what that amount is. The FY24 reflects that $544,000 sweep. What it's going to be next year, we don't know. And so obviously we don't budget for it until after the audit. Personnel cost, 4.6 million, the largest expense category in the general fund. 73% of that are public safety, which would be police, fire, and dispatch. Any questions on that? Mayor, I believe Mr. Burton has a question.
Bird, go ahead.
I don't know if you're going to address it. If you are, you can let me know right off the bat, but what do we have and what are our reserves?
Yeah, it's at 3 months by council policy. And so what's going to happen, we're going to conduct the audit. Yes, sir, 3 months.
Oh, 3 months.
Yeah. And so in March, the audit will be completed. The auditor will tell us how many months of reserve that we have. And anything over 3 months is typically swept over into the capital fund, leaving 3 months always in the general fund.
Because I must have misunderstood at some point. I heard when the previous mayor was on, and I think it was during the
Yes, sir. Yeah,
crime control.
4
it was
months.
5 or 6 months reserve.
It was a little over 4, just under 5. That's before the sweep though. And so like I said, in March, we're going to get a new number. It might be 3.5 months. It might be 9 months. I don't know, whatever it's going to be, but we'll sweep it out to make it 3 months. So she was simply saying that to start with, after the audit, we had a little over 4 months or whatever it was.
And again, that goes into general.
No, that money is swept out of the general fund into the capital fund, so that we can pay for the street reconstruction projects and equipment and whatnot. Mhm.
It's the whatnot.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Massey, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's not- And speaking of the capital fund, okay, so the thing about the capital fund is there's no funding source really for the capital fund. We depend on that sweep every year, and we hope it's a good size sweep so we can pay for things. But we also depend on transfers in from other funds. And so that would be from the sewer, stormwater, you'll see that in your budget, economic incentive fund, and even the streets fund. The problem that we're going to have going forward is some of these funds are running out of fund balance. We're tapping into them, and that's going to, down the road in a couple of years, it's just going to be less money being swept into the capital fund, and that affects how and when and how much you pay for your street projects. Right now, we're trying to do one every year. We might need to taper that back sometime in the future.
Right now, our capital fund is at 1,000,005 and change. 1,598,928, correct? We're budgeted
1185,
425.
yes, revenues 1.185 million. Mhm.
And then we're estimated at 1343, 1,343,428.
Okay, that's for this year? Yes, sir. Are you asking about next year or this year?
But we're on 23, 24. And then 24, 25, we're estimated at a change of 57% negative, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir. Down to 580,000. Mhm.
And this is where you were mentioning you're anticipating that it may be less because of the fact that those funds are being depleted.
No, not yet. We're not showing a depletion in funds yet. What this is showing is that there's different costs each year, depending on what street project we're doing, how many street projects, what we had budgeted for that street project, and it's going to fluctuate every year. Last year, you see the revenues were pretty high, low. Next year, who knows? So it bounces around all over the place. And that's a reason why a lot of towns don't include the capital budget, because it looks kind of like, oh my God, what's going on there? Why that big deficit? Well, because last year you had a big surplus, and it's going to change every year. Mhm.
We anticipate here, in the change. I think you mentioned it's 57% of amount of 763, 428 added to the budget. Is that correct? Because it's in parentheses.
Let's move ahead one more slide. Yeah, so is this the slide you're looking at? Or?
No, I'm looking at the actual.
Yeah, hopefully that lines up with that. So if that's easier to understand, that might be easier to see that.
63, 428 is correct. That's the change you're looking at adding to the budget, correct?
That's a decrease in revenue. If it's in red, it's a decrease.
Okay.
And so what we're showing here is that revenues decrease 700. Yeah, and expenses decrease as well. Mhm.
Expenses, we're looking at 500,000. Go ahead, Councilman Summers.
Is that decrease due to the fact that we've already bought police cars and a fire truck? But we don't need major equipment?
Yeah, that's part of it. Typically on a replacement cycle, we have 2 police interceptors that are replaced every year, and that's constant. And that's what we need to keep up and decrease maintenance costs, of course. So that's on a set routine. But this year, since we got 4 of them real close, or just recently, we only need 1 this year. And so that's going to drop your expenses 100,000. Also, there was some expenses included in Hillcrest last year that won't be realized. So they're not included this year. So that's part of it too. And again, depending on what's in there, it's going to go up and down every year, and it can look quite drastic at times.
Does the maintenance equipment come out of the capital fund?
No, sir.
Councilman Burke.
Do we have the money in the kitty, so to speak, for phase 2 and phase 3? Or we still need to come up with that money of Crestview?
Right. So the transfers that we're making this year will be for Crestview 2, which will kick off pretty soon now, but the bulk of those expenses will be next year. And so the transfers next year would be for Crestview 3. And I'm not seeing any problems with that or the equipment that we have to purchase this year and next year.
Go ahead. Mr.
Okay, so if we can go back one more slide, Ms. Lisa, thank you. So here's the overall expenses, 654,000, 500,000 for the street projects and equipment purchases of 150,000. And I think that's down this year because of like we said, with the police cars. So our proposed street projects, we do have 454,000 for Crestview 2. We do have $50,000 of engineering cost for Hillcrest Drive to keep that project going. We've already spent 160,000 on Hillcrest. And if we keep it going, then you can figure another $50,000 next year for engineering cost for everything that they have to do. The proposed equipment for this year would be $50,000 for just 1 interceptor, $35,000 for driveway repairs at the fire station to cover up the sinkhole, $50,000 to replace their 18-year-old public works pickup, and $15,000 for a dumpster enclosure here at the Justice Center. When it comes to vehicles, typically, yeah, and these are all highball prices, obviously, conservative. If we can get a used truck cheaper, obviously, that's what we'll look for. And then on the next the next time we have a workshop, we will hand out the actual mileage of all our vehicles and what we've been spending on the repairs as well. But that's what we have slated for now.
Mr. Perales, go ahead.
And these are just recommendations, okay? So this is not set in stone. So this is not a done deal. We're just letting you know some of the budget requests that have come in by staff and the dumpster enclosure council member. So those numbers are not set in stone. So these are simply recommendations of equipment purchases for next year, if you choose to do so. The police interceptor, probably yes. The others are questionable. So, I mean, or the driveway needs to be addressed because the trucks, they continue, that sinkhole continues to sink. So that's just, but just to let you know that, you know, these are things that are still being proposed only.
Well, I would like
Go
to
ahead.
see, I would like to see what a $15,000 dumpster enclosure looks like. I don't get that. But that's the least of my,
I would rather budget higher and then come back and say, I've saved you some money than telling you it's going to be $1,000, it comes back 10,000. But I mean, that's what the number that was given for me for Mr. Lara, who did the research on it. And so
why
that's
do we
what-
need a
I
dumpster
want the
enclosure up
floor.
here?
Sir?
Why do we need a dumpster enclosure up here?
It was-
So right now, the city is, and I know somebody hates grandfathered in on the enclosures. We require enclosures for all commercial establishments, and we don't have one. And so, you know, when we've addressed addressed the issue with some commercial establishments, they always point to the fact that we don't have one. And it's real difficult for us to say we're grandfathered. And if you notice, you know, across the street, they're grandfathered. And so their dumpsters would just sit out there. So it's a choice. I mean, it's really a choice. That's all it is.
I
And
mean,
that-
if it's a dumpster enclosure to secure documents, I get that more than it's just trying to keep up with the Joneses on the other side of the street, because we brought that up years ago and they weren't gonna, there was no place to put their dumpster and they weren't gonna build an enclosure. So, yeah. The public works truck, I sure wish they would have taken my suggestion years ago and instead of buying a new Toyota for the Public Works Department at the time, my suggestion was to give the fire truck, not the fire truck, but the fire pickup truck down to Public Works and get fire a new vehicle as an emergency response. And it kind of a hand-me-down because it was still a new truck at the, fairly new truck at the time. And you kill two birds with one stone on that, whereas you get a brand new vehicle for the fire department, which is more emergency than having one of our public works stuck on the other side of the highway weed eating, you know, so that was my suggestion years ago. But all righty, you.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan.
I have a question, maybe a hypothetical question, and perhaps the chief of police can answer this. I've driven by the impound lot on several occasions and noticed some real nice trucks in there. And I know that other cities have confiscated vehicles to use for police vehicles. So is there a problem with confiscating a impounded truck to use for public works?
No, sir, that is certainly within our purview. It's just a matter of finding one that's actually running and.
See some nice looking trucks in
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
you know?
We-
Gilbert?
We evaluate, I know that, I believe the one we use for code, yeah, the one that we use for code is a, to use your words.
Well, you know,
confiscated.
I mean, that's an
But
avenue to look
no,
into.
So one of the questions that I,
$50,000 for a truck.
when I asked the chief, they look at the condition and make sure we don't get something that's gonna require a lot of maintenance. But if we find one, we're gonna keep it.
Yeah.
And so that's, to your point, yeah, we
Well, I
we
just
do
don't,
take advantage of that.
I don't want y'all to not even think about that idea. I want it brought up and thought about, you know? If it's gonna save us $40,000, you know? And the dumpster enclosure, that's a sore subject itself because I get a lot of debris in my yard from dumpsters, along gentlemen from the apartments that don't have enclosures on them. Every time the, you know, the birds fart, the trash blows in my yard. Okay, I'm tired of it. You gotta go with dumpsters enclosures, let's go with all of them. That's all I gotta say.
Anyone else? Mr. Bessie, go ahead.
Okay. And so just to reiterate, the things that are in the capital fund don't affect what's in the general fund. It's its own separate fund. If you say, let's kill all that, it's not going to save the general fund any money, just to reiterate that point. Go ahead, Ms. Lisa. Let's go to the special revenue funds. So special revenue funds are those funds that are fenced off, not with a dumpster enclosure, but they're fenced off. They're only for certain specific uses. And so that's kind of restricted. That's all I got. That's my comment for the day. Okay, and so we do have 16 of these, and we're going to start with the ones that have deficit spending in them. Some of this is by design. Some of it is, well, it's the EDC fund, and it's our number one. Yes,
Sorry to
sir.
interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
On the special revenue funds, we have none. Is that why we're passing it up?
No, we have 16 and we're going into them now, but we're starting with the deficit ones.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so the EDC fund shows the deficit, obviously, of 437,000 because of primarily the loans. The street fund's 142,000 because we are taking money out of that and moving it over into the capital, but there's no money going in. We suspended the transfers going into the street fund last year, and we'll do so again as well this year and perhaps next year. But at some point, we do need to get money going back into the streets fund, obviously. Maybe not necessarily 100,000 a year, but we're only spending about maybe $10,000 a year on actual street repairs. And so, but we can assess that in next year's budget cycle. And then the economic incentive fund, again, taking money out of that into the capital fund. We have 115,000 or roughly 100,000 going in every year from the 1/3 of the CPS franchise fee. 2/3 of it goes to the general fund and 1/3 of it goes to the economic incentive fund. There isn't a whole lot of economic incentive fund expenses, so to speak. It's there if need be, if we need to do something, but we're primarily rating that as well for our capital fund. And so one of the recommendations for this year I'll make is that we take that CPS franchise fee that's going into the economic incentive fund and move that back into the general fund, and that'll increase our revenues $100,000. We'll still have a healthy fund balance for the economic incentive fund for a couple of years there. And then the last one is the federal forfeitures fund. It's been basically a closed fund for a while. We're just going to kill off the balance this year and close it out. And we'll look at all of those anyway. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Lisa. And so this was the Economic Development Corporation and what their budget looks like. $400,000. Well, as you can see, there's no revenue coming in, no partner dividends. If they come in, great, but we're not budgeting for them. The loan payment is $399,000, and we also put in $38,000 of other expenses that we anticipate will not happen, but they're there just in case for the attorney that represents us, and then for professional services, travel and training. If somebody says, "Hey, let's go up and see what Austin's doing," there's a little bit of money in the budget for that kind of thing, but we don't anticipate that. And and of course, with this, you have your beginning fund balance and your ending fund balance. Now, this one, the beginning fund balance is not cash. It's the actual value of our interest, of our ownership in WODA. And so it started out at 5 million, and it's going to go down every year. And after 10 years, when all the loan payments are done, of course, that fund balance will be gone. But that's FY31 problem.
Master, can we
Yes,
go
sir.
back real quick to that previous slide? On the economic incentive fund, you have 115K of revenue that's recorded for 25.
Go ahead one slide, Ms. Lisa.
Yeah, there you go. There's total expenses include a 200K transfer to the capital fund. And the capital fund is where your most expenditures are occurring for equipment and thus not other stuff that may be needed. The only thing I see with that is that economic incentive fund is exactly what it says it is. It's used to entice economic and stimulate economic development and activity into the community.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need to move it over to capital fund and just leave it in its own fund and start utilizing? Because see, one of the main principal goals that we're trying to achieve collectively is to increase sales tax revenue. That fund, if you expend it in the capital fund by including it in there, and more than likely it's going to be expended very quickly, we could, prioritize, isolate it, utilize it to possibly do some commercials, some kind of, themed incentive to bring in new businesses to the community. And, basically just say, hey, we're open for business. Our doors are open. We're looking for new business. We can come up with some strategic marketing ideas, but we can utilize it for that purpose, for marketing, incentivize for economic growth within the community.
Mhm.
So did you suggest that fund being placed over to the Capitol, or is that collectively between you and staff and the administrator's office?
I hate to say it's historical, but historically, that's what we've done.
Yeah.
And I guess it really comes down to what do you want to pay? Do you want to stop doing street projects and pursue economic incentive instead? I mean, that's not my call, but to me, as the numbers guy, we're on the hook for Crestview 2 and 3, and that's got to be paid. Now, after that, and I know historically, we haven't spent much. I think we spent some, maybe 20, 30,000 for some signs once, and maybe we spent a little bit of it for COVID. But, and it's got a pretty healthy fund balance. So, but yeah, at some point, yes.
Be a little careful on it because, I'm against the principle of stealing from Peter to pay Paul. Paul, that's the old principle, is just take from here and let's put it over here, and it never goes back to Peter.
Yeah, it's the shell game.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I just want to be careful that we're not utilizing too many transfers of funds that are earmarked for specific use and transfer them over and then trying to substantiate it by saying we need it for streets and we're going to hurt our street projects. Well, if the capital project is managed properly, and it should be, then there should be no need for it to be incentivized by any other budget or any other project.
Yeah, but the capital fund, the problem with that is its primary source.
I know, up and down.
Yeah, we don't know what we're gonna get in a sweep. We might get nothing in a sweep, and then what do? Well, you gotta read your funds then. So yeah, you get the point.
Something to consider. We'll look at collectively. I just thought I'd throw that out there for us.
Mhm.
Okay, now you can move on to the next ones.
Next one, Ms. Lisa,
Dave,
streets.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And so again, we suspended the transfer from the general fund in to make the budget work this year, and we're doing so next year as well. We're budgeting for $142,000 of expenses. Except for the transfer, we maybe spend 5,000, 10,000 of it. And so we should have a pretty good fund balance going into 26. But at some point, like I said, we got to get some money coming back into that from the general fund, but we got to stop the bleeding this year first. And there's your economic incentive fund. It is a really good fund balance. There's virtually no expenses really that come out every year other than the transfer. And so even if we do the $200,000 transfer this year, we still have realistically maybe a $300,000 fund balance going into next year and beyond. But for this year, it's $115,000 of revenue is recorded, and that's 1/3 of the CPS franchise fee. I would recommend that we take that out and return that to the general fund and help reduce our deficit there in the general fund for FY25. Our total expenses this year include $200,000 for the transfer, $5,000 just as a bookmark for professional services in case needed. Any questions on what we're doing there? In our federal forfeitures fund, I guess, it's virtually, I think we ended our participation in the program in 2019. We've kept it open because occasionally a court case is resolved and the city will get a little bit of money. So we're budgeting $3,000 this year as a bookmark. What comes in, who knows? And then we're also spending the rest of it to purchase police, I believe it's police helmets, Chief?
Yes, sir. Historically, we've been looking at just equipment for our police department that we use out of that fund. I believe, if I'm correct, Mr. Messick, that was from our officers that were assigned to either DEA or on a task force.
Yes, sir.
Years past. So it was something that I haven't wanted to deplete the fund. So we just use it for, in past, it's been tourniquets, IFAC kits, just equipment for the police department that we don't have to spend out of our budget.
And it's also 20,000 that we don't have to spend in our capital fund as well. So that's a savings there to the capital fund by making those purchases in the fund, in the forfeitures fund. Okay. Traffic safety fund. I'm sorry, Mr. Bird. Yes, sir. All the special revenues are, well, not all of them, but yes, it is offensive. Yes, sir. Okay, and then on the traffic safety side, this is our closed fund. This is the one that closed for the year. It concluded in May of 2024. Approximate loss of usable city revenue, 450,000, and that was 3 police positions. And it also paid the city streetlights bill. There was actually also a surplus just about every year, and we would take $100,000 out of this fund and move it over into the capital, but that revenue source now is gone as well. And so something to think about going forward, but you see the impact of that. We'll finish out the fund balance this year. And there may be a little bit that we can move over into the capital fund afterwards or general fund, wherever. It won't be that much, if any. And so all these funds or all these expenses have now been included into the general fund on the payroll side, of course, and then on the operational cost for the utility bill in the general fund. And that's what's making up a big chunk of that $411,000 deficit. So we talked about $1 million of revenue, $1 million of expenses earlier. Gross, it would be over $1 million coming in every year, but of course we have to pay the vendor like 60% of that. What's left of that, we had to pay the state half of that, and so our portion that we could really use was about the $450,000.
We know what the last number was on the generated revenue from the cameras as of the date we shut off?
No, but we're projecting, what I put up there was 716,000. I know we still have revenue trickling in. So no, I would have to update the line budget next time but hopefully we can have that. But I still think revenue will trickle in. There's still people that are making payments on the website, which is primarily the revenue that we're not recognizing in-house revenues. We're telling people just to forget about it, but people that pay it online will continue to do so for a little while. Probably at the end of the summer that we'll be all done with that. Crime control, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one. We've just passed the budget in there. What we passed is what's up here on the slide. It's pretty much payroll costs are your biggest expenses, and we have some facility maintenance costs in there as well. It's a balanced fund. It's clipping away doing its thing. Okay, yeah. Hotel occupancies tax. Again, a pretty healthy fund balance here, as you can really only use it for so many things. And even with we eliminated the economic development director's salary out of this fund, but we moved this salary over to the general fund so that we could reap that savings in the general fund versus the hotel fund. And so we put an equivalent amount of salary back into the hotel fund. So it looks like nothing really changed. It looks like business as usual, the same salaries, the same expenses, but we are taking that savings and moving it into the general fund. The biggest expense here is typically the Jazz Festival, and I believe there's 25,000 budgeted for that this year. Otherwise, it continues to clip along doing its thing, but I think I see questions.
Are we taken care of on the Jazz Fest? As far as artists are paid, everything's, this is vendors?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yes. Councilman Sellers?
Can you tell me what the expenses are on this? The 234,900, what was that?
For this year's budget, yeah, that's what was budgeted for this year, 234,900. And for that, we do have the line item budget, and I can go in there and look at it, but you can see how there's a lot of expense lines with the hotel fund. So let me get you to the right page. On your line item budget, it's on page 24. And on page 25, and you can see there's a bunch of line item expenses here, but of course the primary expense there would be your payroll of 121,000. Your other biggie would be office rent and, but that came to an end, so we saved money there. And then your jazz festival and a lot of advertising promoting the city.
Office rent? I thought,
Yeah,
I thought we owned that space.
We were paying office rent for a portion of it, but that stopped once the partnership dividends stopped.
So does the center pay us rent?
Yes, sir. Mhm. But that goes to the general fund.
I was under the understanding that that joint office, we don't pay anything anymore now that we. became
Correct.
owners, Correct?
Yes, sir.
There's
Mhm.
no revenue on the side.
Yeah, I think that's what you were asking.
Just
Yes.
the estimated interest, I think you mentioned, or something off the, what did you say it was? There's generated income coming from somewhere?
We collect rent money from Senator Menendez,
Right, but.
or his portion of that goes to the general fund. The rest of the expenses are outgoing, obviously. A lot of advertisement, web-based magazine advertisements to promote the city.
Right,
Is that-
but I heard there was income coming in from interest off the ownership, I guess, that we have, you incorporate into this fund. But no, that's not what you.
Yeah,
said.
that
Okay.
would be the economic development. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What page am I on, Lisa? I'm kidding. I got it. Okay, yeah, we're gonna go to slide 26. Seized cash fund is one of those fenced funds. We hold money and when we find it or compensated, and then we pay it back out at some point. So not much going on there. Next fund would be our child safety fund, another one of those fenced funds. It's slowly grown in fund balance. We get money and it's shared between all the cities in the county. Revenue comes from vehicle registrations, parking tickets, school zone violations. They total it all up, and based on your population, they give us a portion every month. And so, yeah, not much going on there. We anticipate about 3,000 a year. That's basically what we got. Expenses go to, or really, there's only about $2,000 worth of expenses. We participate in National Night Out as an aspect of child safety, and the Blue Santa promoting child safety, a component of that in the Blue Santa as well. Okay. Impound fund. So impound and auction. Auction is a fence fund. Impound is really a product of the general fund, separated out into its own component. Fund 22 years back. And with this fund, it's going to fluctuate year to year depending on the impounds. But this is one of the funds that if it's not making money, there's no expenses, right? If we're not making any tows, we're not paying the tow company, we're not bringing in any revenue. So it's pretty much a self-sustaining fund. We are using the fund this year, cutting into the fund balance a little bit to transfer $60,000 to the general fund. Traditionally, we've used these two funds, impound and auction, to make transfers into the general fund. Like I said, impound folds into general fund at the end of the year anyway, with the fund balance. So,
Question on this,
mm,
I interrupt. And maybe for our chief of police, how many towing companies do we utilize in the city?
it's one in Bannis,
How many?
one, and it's with Bannis.
I've seen others park with different names in the community. They park usually over at the old rental
Yes, sir.
place on Fredericksburg, and sometimes they'll park and they're like sitting there. And I've seen Baines, but I didn't know if we had any others than that.
No, we use Bannis. Other, a business might call a tow truck to remove a vehicle from their property or something. Maybe that's why they're hanging around.
Okay, and Banis was acquired to us by RFP. Are they subject to RFP every year, or
Yeah, we recently renewed that, I believe.
automatic renewal on the contract? Were they originally selected off an RFP process?
That I don't know. I know we recently went through that process again.
Chief, or?
Yeah, I don't know.
So that had been in process from years past. And then when Mr. Pedales had come on board with us, he wanted me to look out to other towing companies. And what we did, we went with 3 other towing companies, and I have their contracts in my office if y'all would like to see them. But for the money and the services provided, Bannis was going to be the cheapest overall. So At that point, we just continued on with Banis, from what they charge us and what the city makes. So each tow is 295 for a basic tow, which is considered just a regular commercial vehicle. Anything bigger than that, obviously, it's going to be a higher expense. So $95 of that goes to Banis, and the city incorporates $200. Other towing companies were higher than that. And in one of the meetings, I forget the name of the company. Like I said, I have it in my office. They were even shocked that they were only making the $95 from Banis. But if council agrees that they want to revisit this again, I could contact or look at other companies. We're not committed to Banis at this time, so I believe the contract expired. I have to look back on the date, and but only because they provided just the best services for us at that rate and that price. We just continued utilizing them.
Councilman Burton?
For Chief, are they keeping up their expectations and good response time so that the officers can get back out on the street?
It's funny you asked that, Mr. Burton. So I'm going to say yes to that because embedded in their contract, it's a 30-minute response time. In years past, we had, when there was a lot of vehicles that were being towed, maybe when there was people that weren't following the law, maybe not acquiring insurance and didn't have their driver's license in line and check with the state of Texas. Banis actually had a unit or maybe two of their tow trucks assigned in the city because it just seemed like we were just constantly towing vehicles. Well, it's kind of drawn away from that, but I know there's certain officers that have to be reminded, and this is my fault or our fault on the police side. As soon as they ask for a tow, within 5 minutes, they're asking the ETA on Banis. And our busiest peak times when we run numbers are at 6 o'clock for our domestic violence calls. If they're running traffic, depending on the hours of time. And one of the things that we stress with the officers are, hey, you have 410 in Bandera that you're coming from. I'm not sure if y'all know that Banis is located just on the other side of Leon Valley, like right off of like Calabria area-ish in that area. So it's going to take a while for them to get here, but usually the owners, which it was Don Banis, now it's been passed over to his son. If they're not here in that 30-minute time frame, they usually don't charge us. So, if to answer your question, yes, sir. But like I said, if there's something else that we want to look into, I'm more than willing to open those contracts again and look into other services.
No, if we're making $200 a pop, don't stir the kitty.
Yeah, yes, sir.
you know?
Go ahead, Mr. Burton. Anybody else? Go right ahead. Thank you.
Auction Fund 30. Auction Fund 23 is up next. It is a balanced fund. It's used to basically record the revenue that comes in from auctions. It's typically a moneymaker. There's really no expenses to speak of. We do claim some, but we're going to take that off of any expenses that come with the auction. We're going to take it off the gross and just recognize the net revenue. The expense that you have up here, that 75,000 is a transfer into the general fund as we typically make out of this fund. Port security, thank you, another fenced fund to be used for court security and technology. We do pay bailiffs out of this that's a legitimate expense, but otherwise it's pretty much balanced every year and growing slightly. So nothing much else to report on that one. Federal grants. So the next two slides you're going to see are grant funds. With grant funds, this one is for federal grants, like the fire department. The expenses and revenues up there that you see came from the most recent fire department grant that they got, which was a federal grant. And so what you have to realize with federal grant funds is that they must always balance. At the end of the year, they always got to say zero fund balance. So you'll never have a fund balance. You'll never have an ending fund balance. Whatever you're given, it's expected that you're going to spend. And so, for instance, they'll give us $1 million, just making up a number, and they'll say the city's portion is 400,000. We'll pay for the whole $1 million in the capital fund. And then when the grant revenue is received, they give us 600,000, let's say, then we'll move 600,000 of expenses to match that revenue in that particular grant fund. And so what we're seeing up here is what happened last year. What's coming up next year, we don't know yet. So typically with all these grants, we're going to have council approval anyway. And so once we know we have a grant and what that amount is, we'll amend the budget to reflect that in this fund if it's a federal a grant. And on the next slide, we have, it's just called grants fund. This is typically where we're going to park our CDBG grants for our street projects. And it's the same thing. We're going to pay for the whole cost of the street renovations up front in the capital fund. And then whatever amount comes in from CDBG, that's the amount of expenses that we move to the grant fund. And so in this case, 425,000 was paid for phase one, I believe, last year. The rest of it, the 600 or the 500,000 of it was picked up in the capital fund. And so that's pretty much how the grant funds work. We know that we've requested money for Crestview 2. We've requested 525,000. What that amount is, we don't know. But when we do know it and council moves forward with it, we'll record that amount into the grants fund. Almost done.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break.
That's your call, Mayor.
Break, call a break, 5 minutes. Give everybody a restroom break and stretch break. Okay, we're going to reconvene the budget workshop. It's 2:18 PM. Go ahead, Mr. Mason. You were
Sure.
at PEG fund. Or were you at grants? Yeah,
Yeah, we're on
PEG
the
fund
big fund,
23,
yes, sir.
33.
Another specialized fund. You can only use this for public education and government access. It's typically restricted to television. That's how the law was initially written. Of course, with cord cutting and advances in technology, they're pushing to, hey, can we use this stuff for live streaming and other stuff? But we'll see what the legislature does. In the meantime, we just continue growing the fund balance for now. And then on your next slide is your debt service fund 36. It records our loan payments. So the revenue comes in from your sale, from your property taxes. We're going to go into taxes here in a minute, but there's two components to property taxes. One of them is for debt. And so this is where the revenue comes in for this. It will always be slightly higher than your expenses because the county prioritizes cities paying their debt first. But it'll be a little bit of an increase, but not much to the fund balance. But it basically covers the tax backed debt, those two tax notes that we talked about earlier for the fire truck and for Vivian. Okay, so now we go into our proprietary funds, which are sewer and stormwater. You may hear these referred to as enterprise funds or business type funds. Is because it's based on service fees. And so they're just classified differently. But to go into our sewer fund, it's going to be the bigger of the two funds. As you can see, we have a really healthy fund balance. And this is the fund that we raid quite a bit for moving money over into the capital fund. This year, we're transferring $250,000 out of this fund into the capital fund. And a lot of streets get paved out of this fund. But ideally, it's balanced every year, and next year is the same. On your stormwater, again, another one of those funds that are slowly gathering steam here in fund balance. And we take 75,000 out of it this year to move over into the capital fund. Otherwise, the fund is balanced, of course. Okay, so, the fun part, slide 38, almost there. Property tax rate. Obviously, we don't have the numbers this year to show you what it's going to look like. And so we resort back to last year's numbers and we play around with those a little bit. But how the process works is the county is going to determine the taxable value. And those numbers are going to come out on July 25th of each year. And for a week or so, 10 days later, I'm going to calculate what the tax rates are and the county is going to calculate. It don't matter what I calculate, the county is going to go with their numbers. And so the county calculates the tax rates for you. And that would be your no new revenue, your voter approval rate and all that. Council, of course, sets its own rate each year. And then so once we know those ceiling and floor numbers, then we can calculate our proposed rate for the year. Next. Yes, sir.
I asked a question. When was the last time Gilbert, you've been on with us for a little bit, but our infrastructure of the actual sewer system itself, when was the last time we did an analysis on that? Like, you know, how good it is, when do we anticipate some major repairs to it? Have we done any kind of an assessment on it lately? Of where we're at? Because I know it's an old sewer system that we have. And so I remember there were some concerns way back about that sewer system that, you know, we may have some breakage, we may anticipate some overrun cost on that in the future and things like that. So just curious.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time the city did one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw him.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Perales. Okay. You want him to go ahead and speak? Okay,
Yeah,
Mr.
that I know of, when we're doing the streets, they're doing the sewer lines and water lines, everything at the same time. So
So the
as,
ones
as,
that
as the
like-
streets are being done, so are
Okay.
the sewer lines. So there's just maybe 3 or 4 streets that still have the old system. But I know Janet was at a time had all the lines videoed and inspected.
They did, so
Yes.
they look pretty good at that.
They, at that time, they were okay.
Okay, just wondering.
Only,
Thank
the only thing we need to do is, you know, as we anticipate new development, is make sure that we have a policy in place for developer participation so that they pay the impact fee for the increase in any utility that's required to be increased. So if you have all of a sudden a hotel built at the corner of Crossroads and Fredericksburg, if it's a high-rise building or whatever, their impact, their existence will increase the capacity needs. And so you need to have something in place that requires an impact fee for that developer to pay the upcharge on the cost to increase the capacity. So, and I don't know that you have that. So it's something that we need to look at. And
Yeah,
if we
that would
don't
be a
have
good
it,
idea.
then we need to add it.
Because I remember there was some concern that, you know, there may be some, you know, critical infrastructure parts that may need required attention. And then we didn't have the funds to cover that at one time. And then I just was wondering, we would have something of that impact fee that you're referring to. Would that be just new construction or would be existing rehab construction?
Anything that adds capacity. So, if, for instance, if you do, you take Wonderland, for instance, the facility, they decide that half of it is gonna be a high-rise housing or whatever, and it increases capacity need, then there has to be that clause in your ordinances that requires an impact fee be applied. And that's, for new development, it's different because if you need streets and all that stuff, that's added as an impact. But for existing areas where we don't have much growth available, then you want the impact fee for any increase in the capacity that's required for that facility.
Okay, perhaps you want to make note of that and we'll throw that in that, yeah.
Sure, I don't think you have one. If you don't, then I can work with Frank to make sure that we add one.
Perfect.
So that
I'll
you can
make note
cover
of it.
yourself for any development in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And just to go back to 56 fund, we have a pretty healthy fund balance in the sewer fund, 600 some thousand. Now, that might not be enough to cover everything. Ideally, with the older sewer lines, we'd like to see that grow to $1 million probably. And also, Mr. Lara had requested the possibility of a sewer capacity study for this fiscal year. That was something that carried over from last year. If we did decide to go with that, then this would be the perfect place for the budget amendment to pay for that.
Okay, as long as we anticipate it and that's all good because that's definitely critical
Yeah, he was
to our
thinking
delivery
ahead. So,
services.
yes.
Yep.
I think that was actually Mr. Nastasi's
Mhm.
idea initially, but okay, so definitions for today and for going forward. Here's the key definitions that you'll hear quite a bit in the budget workshops. It all starts out with your taxable value. That's the appraised value of your home, your businesses. With your homes, it's less the exemptions that we have. And so all this is used to calculate the total value of the city. And last year, I believe it was $350 million was the total value of everything, commercial properties, multi-family housing and the housing district itself. So it's $350 million. And so that's what you start your evaluations on. The proposed rate is simply the rate that the city passes. This year, the proposed rate or our current rate is 0.604 per $100 evaluation. Council may keep that rate, increase it or decrease it. That will become our new proposed rate for FY25. The tax rate is made up of two components, your debt and your general fund portion, also known as your INS portion and your M&O portion. The INS would be the debt portion. The M&O is what goes into the general fund. These two are connected. If one goes up, the other one's going to go down. If you increase debt, then you're decreasing the amount to the general fund and vice versa, assuming you want to keep the same tax rate. If you want to go up, then that's a different story. But those two are tied together, and typically, obviously, the M&O is going to be the larger portion that goes into your general fund to fund city operations. The county is going to compute those two rates for you, the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate. Your no new revenue rate, you can think of that as your floor. And ideally, that's what the county would like for you to approve every year, but we call that the floor. Your voter approval rate is going to be your ceiling. If you go over the voter approval rate, it automatically goes to a residence for election, for a vote on it. Okay. We've already talked about the current rate. The county also calculates the average home value for us every year for comparison purposes. And so these are the basic terms that you're going to see here going forward. And I believe Mr. Burton has a question.
Councilman Burton. Thank you, Mr. Messick.
What about a rollback rate?
So they've done away, the terminology has changed. They've done away with the rollback rate. It's now, I believe it's the no new revenue rate. In the past, I believe when you were on council, you could go up to like 8% every year, but now the voter approval rate is going to be 5%. And so the state is, constricting what cities can do with their tax rate more and more so.
Anything else, Mr. Burton? Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Messick. Oh, Mr. Sellers, go right ahead.
What is the maximum rate allowed for voter approval rate?
Yeah, and so that,
That maximum
yeah.
before it goes to citizens?
Yeah, it's computed every year for you, and every year it changes because your valuations are going up or down or whatever, and so that rate will change. We're gonna show a slide in a second here that shows what it could be, but yeah, once you hit that voter approval rate, then yeah, it's subject to an election. Mhm.
So the answer is, may I, Mr. Sellers? You finished? Okay. So the answer to your answer is that it's based off the evaluations then?
Yeah, it's going to start with evaluation. So
That will set the voter rate?
yeah, once we know taxable value, we're going to know and so once we know the value,
Thank you.
yeah, and so we'll know the no new revenue and the voter approval rate. Yes, sir. Mhm. Historic values, last year it was 350 million. And you can see typically they're going up every year. There was one blip there in 2021. I believe that was COVID. We had a little dip there. And so what's important to understand with this number is that as the valuations go up and your property tax stays at the same rate, you are collecting more money every year without raising your rate. If it goes down and you keep the same revenue or the same tax rate, then you're losing money that year and you got to tighten your belt. And so a lot of what we've done traditionally and what a lot of cities do, they just leave that tax rate alone. They can go back to their voters and say, we haven't raised your rate. The valuations went up and that's why your tax bill is higher. So that's kind of an important concept to understand as we move forward. Okay, Ms. Lisa.
Can you speak a little louder onto the mic?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So revenue required. Let's play the what if game here. With the budget that we have with a $411,000 deficit, and we could only use the tax rate to remedy that situation, what would the numbers look like? So again, this is a what if scenario. We're not proposing this rate. We don't want to cause any panic or anything, but what would the numbers look like? Well, we know our debt. We know we're going to have to pay $190,000. We know in the general fund, we would have to collect about $2.4 million. And so total needed would be $2.56 million. So what tax rate would that be based on $360,000 of valuation? Well, our tax rate would then be 0.710292. And that is an 11-cent increase in your tax rate. So is that viable? Is that realistic? No, we would never recommend that. But based on what we have now, playing the what if game, this is what you would need to balance the budget.
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Do you know what San Antonio paid last year?
No, yeah, no, not right offhand. But traditionally, we're higher than San Antonio, of course, yes.
Anything else, Mr. Burton? Anybody else? Mr. Messick, go ahead.
Proposed tax rate there. Just another way of looking at it with percentages in here. So if the valuation is 360, and I think it'll be higher, but that would be about a $10 million increase on the valuations or a 2.6% increase. With a tax rate going up from 0.604 to 0.71, that would be about an 11-cent increase or an 18% increase for your taxable revenue. That would cover the deficit there with another $439,000 of revenue or a 21% increase. But again, this is just for what ifs.
If I may just add real quick some information, FYI. The San Antonio City Council unanimously voted back in 23, now this was 23, for the 24 fiscal year, it was 0.54159 per 100 evaluation for the 2024 fiscal year.
Mm.
So it's down from the 2023 fiscal year rate of 0.54161 per 100 evaluation. So that's your answer, Jack. It's considerably lower from our current, when we were at 58 and then we went to 60. And now we're proposing possibly, depending upon where the valuations come in. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
And traditionally, yes, and traditionally we show a slide and maybe it'll, when we get into the taxes or the next public workshop, where Balcones ranks in comparison to the other cities in Bexar County. And traditionally, yeah, we're close to the top. Mhm. Okay, so putting it in perspective with what the county is going to give us. Yeah, can you go back one more? Yes. Yeah, and so the no new revenue rate, again, this is based on last year's numbers. The no new revenue rate was 0.537. We kind of look at that as the floor. We passed a current rate of 604, which was less than the voter approval rate of 0.6257. And so these numbers will be recalculated again based on the new valuation numbers. But if they theoretically stayed the same, then you can see the 0.71 would be well over the voter approval rate. So that would go out for a vote. The residents would say no, and we would have to go down to the highest we could go. Then after that would be the voter approval rate of 0.62. And so that's kind of a little bit of how all that works. Any questions on that? Historic tax rates. As you said, the city maintained for a long time the same rate of 0.583. And so that's a good and bad thing, right? If the valuations go up, then you're collecting more money without having the rates or without having to raise your tax rate. But it's also leaving money on the table because there was an opportunity here to gradually start building that tax rate up. Because he says there was obviously a big increase from 0.583 the prior year to 0.604. And so you kind of lost that ability to capture that extra revenue by slowly stepping up the tax rate. But on the other hand, on the taxpayer's perspective, you held their bill down. So, you know, it's depending on how you look at it, the perspective of it.
The only, if I may add, the only analogy I can use on that is from the perspective of a taxpayer. It's paying the full tax rate, not being subject to a discount from Balcones Heights, homestead exemption from the Bexar County. You know, we were talking about the other day of putting food on the table, the slightest cut in any kind of freeze raises or any type of step increases or COLA, it would have a significant impact on the employees. And I mentioned to them that we're all in the same boat because we, myself and others, you know, even if we historically just step up little by little, it's a huge amount of money that we are taking the food off the table for ourselves as well, having to make our payments to our insurance and trying to decide whether we can pay insurance or pay the medical bills or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I know we're all struggling in this economy. It's been terrible for everybody, but I'd caution on the fact that we need to be very, very cautious if we're proposing or looking at any kind of tax increase.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're going to get some, and rightfully so, right behind them, get some pushback on that because of the fact that, any tax increase whatsoever is a huge impact on us, the homeowners that are paying that full impact. So I think that's what I was trying to convey in the last meeting to everybody is that we're all in that same boat. You guys as employees and us as the councilman, mayor, equally concerned. Councilman?
Yeah, if I may. So on a house that's valued, say, 226, the city of Balcones Heights, the estimated tax for 2024 would have been 1110, so $1,110. Of that, approximately 70% was due to increased value. So that in that example, the house went from 206,000 to 226,000. Okay. So in 2023, that tax for the city of Balcones Heights would have been about $1,010. So it's a $1,010 from one year to 2024 with the higher valuation of $1,110. So it's about $100. Approximately 70% of that was due to the increase in value. So when you take that $100 tax increase overall, 70% of that being due to valuation increase, really only $30 of that was due to the tax rate increase for Balcones Heights. So yes, it is an increase, but it's not something that it's going to have a major impact where people won't be able to feed their families.
Well,
just
I
wanna
don't
make that
know.
point, and I'll yield.
What was your tax this last year? What was your tax base? What was your home estimated at?
It was significantly more than 226,
226?
significantly more.
Significantly.
Significantly
So that
more.
means closer to 300,000, somewhere in that area?
Yes.
Okay.
So I looked at mine was $40 approximately difference,
Yeah.
but
And that was
for just the
because-
tax rate.
Yeah, I think it's because the legislature did something this year to bring down the tax rates for everybody. We had a lesser tax bill this year. It was a discounted tax rate that they gave us. We didn't pay the full amount.
No, I'm looking
Normally,
at
like
the
mine is close to
valuation.
5,000.
I'm looking at the valuation and the percentage of the tax rate.
Right, on mine, it was close to 5,000
Um,
on the tax rate, what I have to pay for taxes.
That's your total tax rate. I'm talking
Total
about the
tax
city
rate.
of Balcones Heights.
Yeah, you're breaking it down just.
Right, because our total tax rate for the city of Balcones Heights is only a fraction. Okay, so as an example, the SAISD actually has the highest tax rate at 1.2%.
Right.
Yeah, can you go to slide 46, Ms. Lisa?
But this is just to give a numerical, give actual values,
Right.
not hypotheticals of it costs us hundreds of dollars and we're going to lose our house, or hundreds of dollars and our residents can't feed their families. It's on a $226,000 home, about $30.
We'll have to look at those numbers. I don't know if I'd agree with it because.
Well, it's on the bcad.org.
It's very high.
I can share it with you.
Yeah.
I can share it with you. It's on bcad.org.
On
And
that,
it's-
I probably would agree with you. Maybe those numbers may be right.
But
But from a
it's,
taxpayer perspective, when I pay that bill and I have to pay that full tax.
well,
it's-
again,
it-
the majority of
Yeah.
the taxes of the total tax rate of being 2.55, 0.6 is for the city of Balcones Heights.
And the only argument I have with that is that regardless, whenever your taxes go up, they're going up. It doesn't matter. You're saying it's not as much to where it doesn't hurt you, but it hurts me.
Well,
And it
I would
hurts
just like
other
to take,
people.
I would like to take the hyperbole out of saying people are hurting and not being able to feed their family due to
Well,
a,
I didn't say that. That was
actually,
earlier, the employees said that when we had that meeting. That was just paraphrasing.
they were talking about not receiving their COLA increases or
That it
step
was gonna hurt
increases.
their ability to pay their bills and family and stuff like that.
That was
said
in
that.
relation,
Yeah,
that was
that was
totally
paraphrasing.
different from this because
Okay, well.
none
either
of
way,
these
I
people live in the
understand.
city of Balcones
I
Heights. They're
hear
not
you.
affected by this tax rate.
I hear you. Okay, so I appreciate the input, and I just feel like myself that any tax increase, I'm going to be against because I just don't feel it's right. that we keep going up, and it's just costing us more money. And I
Well,
understand that the valuations go up, but where I was having a hard time understanding, maybe you can clarify for me, is you're saying that if we don't go up on the tax rate in accordance to the tax valuation, then what did you say was the down?
Yeah, it's indirectly proportional or directly, I forget whatever it is. But as the valuation amount goes up, even if you keep the same rate, the city receives more money. And the taxpayers' tax bill will increase dollar wise, even though the city didn't raise their tax rate at all. And likewise, if valuations go down and the city keeps the same, the city loses money, but the taxpayer is going to pay less. And I think this slide helps because it really shows where the money is going. So of your tax bill, Balcones Heights makes up about 20% of it. The rest of the 80% roughly is made up by these other entities. It is possible that Balcones Heights say, we're not going to have any property taxes. We're going to make it zero, but all these other entities would raise it and you would still see an increase on your tax bill. That's theoretical, that's extreme, but that is mathematically possible. And so here you go, you think you did a great thing, you cut it to zero, but everybody's complaining, but my tax bill still went up. Well, because the city doesn't really have much leverage, it's only about 20% of it that we can control on that. Yeah,
I guess what we can control is our part.
yeah, absolutely.
Debating with my colleague
Mhm.
is that that's the part that I wish to control, is the part that we can control, regardless if it's, its comparison to whether it's $30 or $20, it's still an increase.
Mhm.
I would just like to take the hyperbole out of the examples that are
What's
given.
that now?
I would just like to take the hyperbole, the exaggeration out of the examples that are given.
I don't know what that means. I don't.
I mean,
but
I mean, don't exaggerate and say you're not gonna be able to feed your family because the city of Balcones Heights raised your taxes $30.
Okay, Mr. Sines, if that's the way you want to put it, fine.
That's not the way I'm putting
That's
it. That's
not-
a,
okay.
that's a mathematical
All right,
fact.
but you're overly emphasizing on something that doesn't really need to be. You're overdoing it, so it's fine. Point made. Mr. Messi, go ahead.
No, go forward, next slide. Levy by property tax. Okay, so who's paying the majority of the taxes in the city? Well, it's the commercial, the residents, the non-residential, the businesses are picking up about 65% of the tax bill. The apartments, the multifamilies picking up about 25% of the tax bill, and residential is picking up about 10% of the tax bill, of the total taxes levied by the city. Of course, commercial and the multifamily, they can pass that increase on to their customers or the residents. You can't do that as a homeowner. I can't do that as a homeowner. I'm stuck with it. But of course, there are exemptions and everything to the tune of $45 million that are given to the homeowners through various exemptions. And that was based on last year's numbers that the commercial and the multifamily don't get. And let's conclude. Yes.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Perales.
Yeah, just a point of clarification that this, while we list residential, it doesn't include rental properties. So rental properties do not get to participate in exemptions. They pay the full freight, so it's not inclusive of that. So the only people that are impacted 100% by the increase are the home, or I'll take
The
that back.
homestead exemption on.
Yeah, so everybody else pays everything except for the homeowner who has exemptions. And those are applied to those folks. If you're over 65, it's capped. So all those things come into play. And those are calculations that are done by Bexar County, not us.
Mhm.
And so you're, the number of people that are affected don't include rental properties in residential areas. Just to.
Okay, in summary, we start with the conclusion, just what you saw at the very beginning. The budget that we're seeing today, the city's general fund currently reflects a deficit of $411,000. And we went through the exercise of what would that look like if we jacked up the tax rate to cover that? Obviously, that's not realistic. Over the summer, that number, that deficit will come down, revenues will go up, expenses will go down a little bit. But ultimately, guys, bottom line is we're probably looking at about a 225, maybe a $250,000 deficit that I'm not going to be able to overcome. And so that's where you guys come in. We're kind of hoping to get some direction from you guys as to where you would like to lead staff on this. And with that, I'll just turn it over to you guys. It's your time.
Hey, do we have any questions? Any input on the recent
I have one.
presentation? Yes, sir.
This garbage, are we considering a new company because of the current one we have now leaving us?
No, sir, at the request of council, because of the performance or lack thereof of the existing one, we went out for an RFP. And not just the performance, but also the proposed increases for their option years. The proposed increases were actually higher than their submitted price during the RFP.
I understand there's been a day or two that they don't show up. But what I'm paying every 3 months now is cheaper than what we're being proposed here. I just wanted to know why we're considering a new company.
I think the number of complaints to everybody
Yeah.
were the same.
the same.
I think also the final straw was the last brush bulky pickup where they missed the entire week and they really sorely underperformed. The
Yeah,
other
they're kind
thing,
of
the other thing,
unorganized there. I agree with that.
the other thing is that they never fulfilled their obligations under the contract to replace all their containers with their company containers. And so you still see all the C6 stuff everywhere.
Okay.
And then, like I said, it wasn't me. You guys told me to do it, so.
Well, that clarifies it. Thank you. I did want to point out that the reason I ran for city council is because property tax increased twice in 4 years. Kind of urinated me off. So I ran. Property tax increase does not affect me. Right. Homestead under disability, my taxes are locked in, but it's the principle. I'm with the mayor on this. It's the principle of twice tax increases.
No, Mr. Sell, I'm not downplaying the impact that it had an impact. And when we did increase the property tax rate last year, we did so out of need. It wasn't because we wanted to or because we felt, hey, we can increase revenues to the city just by taxing the citizens more. No, we had to address a shortfall. And that was the most prudent way to do it. So
I think
we
everybody
found,
knows, Mark, the tax increase was because of that Wonderland Mall.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing that is.
And that
that
was
is
a
a
bad
large expense.
investment to start
Yeah,
with.
I'm not disagreeing. It's a large expense and it is causing us to spend money.
Yeah.
But the tax increase that was done was taken very seriously by us and we debated it a lot over many meetings. And we tried to find the lowest possible tax rate that we could and still meet the city's obligations. So I do want to thank Mr. Messick for his diligence putting all this information together.
Thank you, sir. May I, Mayor? Mr. Sellers, we only raised the tax rate once, and that was last year. It had been the same for a number of years. And actually, no, we did not raise the tax rate. None of it went to WODA. It really didn't. It was for a bunch of other issues. Now, will that be the case in the future? I can't say, but yeah, nothing went to WODA for sure. The WODA loan is paid in general fund cash. The expenses are recorded back to the EDC, so nothing was budgeted for that technically.
But there are other alternatives than raising the taxes to the citizens. And I think that's what my colleague is trying to imply.
Yeah, and we
There's other
debated those
alternatives.
alternatives a lot last year and taking citizen, commentary into account, none of those solutions were digestible at that time. We couldn't do them because the citizens didn't want it at the time.
And please don't discount the fact, the first bit of information that I gave you, that some of the cost-cutting measures that we took to be able to mitigate and minimize the increase that was added. And so, it's almost a little bit over $400,000 total that we'll be able to use for other things. And so please don't discount that.
And Gilbert, on a more positive note, is just gave me incentive to get in here and familiarize myself with the government here.
Mr. Mayor, I did sign up to make a few comments. May I do that at this time? Thank you very much, sir. I have a handout. Would you hand those out for me? Please, Delia. Please give one to everyone on the council. Also,
What is the comments in reference to the budget?
yeah. And one to Mr. Morales and one to everybody on council. And David, Mr. Sellers, excuse me, Councilman Sellers, you gave me a great segue when you talked about the mall, and that's what I want to talk about just briefly. I think that's related to the budget. What I gave you guys, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have because I was on the council at the time we voted to partnership with the mall for 46.7% interest. But we were given 5 scenarios. You have them in front of you. And I just want to look just briefly at the first scenario. All of them have different assumptions. All of them produce net income to the city. So this is what we use to make a decision whether or not to go into this mall partnership or Wonderland of the Americas. If I can draw your attention, if you would, that double stripe line at the bottom.
Mr. Gilliam, may I interrupt you? Mr. Mayor, I believe we have a resident that's speaking that merits your attention. Will you please give him the courtesy and give him the attention?
What I was saying,
Mr. Gillian, I don't need you to lecture me on anything, sir, about giving anybody attention. I'm giving him attention. I'm putting away my equipment. I'm listening to everything he's saying. First of all, you weren't recognized. So again, you're out of order, okay?
May I be
So-
recognized?
No, you may not. The recognition is with Mr. Gillian. Let him.
You know, in fact, I
please.
was
No, you're out
recognized.
of order. You're out of order. Mr. Gillian, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to direct your attention to the double line at the bottom bar line. Just go up 3 lines and they read going up Crossroads, pro rata share, Balcones Heights, and distribution, excuse me, to the partnership. The first year in the partnership, we were supposed to get 65,805. The second year, 883,411. Third year, 471 and change, and fourth year and the fifth year. The others show different assumptions with different amounts of revenue coming in. But when we made the decision to go in the mall, these were the I don't want to say certified because that's indicated they were audited, but these were the numbers that we were given by the partnership. And that's why we made the decision that we made. Now, in contrast, if you look at distributions to Balcones Heights, 2022 was 0, Mr. Perales, is that right? 2023 was 0, 50,000. And 2024, 0. So out of those 3 years, and this was the conservative as is estimate, we were told that we were going to get in $1.4 million in cash flow. We got 50,000. There was a comment made in the previous meeting that the mall is not at fault. I disagree with that, respectfully disagree with that, because I think the mall was at fault. I think the mall gave us overinflated numbers. And I think the onus on that is the mall. And also the onus on that is on me, because I was the finance committee chairman. I trusted these numbers presented to me. The rest of the council trusted these numbers. All I want to do, gentlemen, is leave this with you, let you see why we made the decision that we made. We were also presented a 10-year pro forma statement, and I don't have a copy of that, Mr. Morales. I think it's circulating somewhere around here in the city files somewhere. But in that particular one, for the 10-year period, we were going to come out at the end of 10 years of net cash flow of $3.3 million. We will have met every payment of 400,000 over 10 years. That's 4 million. So we would have had a gross income of over $7 million from the mall. I just want you guys to be aware of what happened. But I take full responsibility because I was on the council. I voted for it. Initially, I was very, very concerned about it. But the more I saw these numbers, I assumed that they were correct, which is on me. And they were not correct. They were grossly, I want to emphasize that, grossly overstated. And as a retired CPA in the State Board of Texas, I can tell you right now, this right here was a severe misstatement of the possibility of funds from that mall, and that rests on the managing partner because these are his numbers. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I'm going to step away from the podium. I've talked enough.
When did you realize this, Mr.? Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
In your opinion, does that give us a legal way out of this possibly?
I'm going to defer that to the city manager and legal staff. If it were me, I would say yes, but I'm not an attorney. I'm a retired certified public accountant, state of Texas, certificate number 23259. Any other questions?
Mr. Gillian, when did you first realize this?
We realized this the first year when we didn't get a payment,
So that was what, in 2022?
2022. Yeah. Yep.
That's when you first noted that you recognized that the numbers were inflated. They were not true. And you have been, what I understand what you're saying is that you had been misled and you were given wrong information to make a judgment on.
It speaks,
Recommendation to making the decision to get into business with.
the actuality of the last 3 years indicate that these numbers were overinflated. That's all I can say. Take my opinion out of it. Just look at the numbers.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's what we're just wanting to know. And so I was paying attention to you. And that's why I was asking you when you had at first noticed that. Mr. Perales?
I just want to add a little bit more to that, and that is that the original agreement also allowed or set aside $1.2 million in reserves to be used by the city, for the city. The managing partner took it upon himself to take the money and spend it on something else without full authorization from the EDC, which is contrary to the budget, to the contract agreement. So there's $1.2 million out there that he spent in an effort to bring in AR Entertainment and Wonder Theater to pay for the tenant improvements with our money. And so that's another piece to this puzzle so that everybody understands and everybody has the same information, inclusive of what Mr. Gillian has just reported.
It's good that you bring this up because there's two things that I want to bring to your attention on this. One, the other party is not here and fair to that party to be able to defend themselves.
True.
There's been already two different communications that have been distributed to the council, which is unfair to the other party. And all I'm trying to do is be neutral to both parties, okay? Obviously, mistakes were made. That's been recognized, okay? We know, and I knew that from the beginning. When I went to see you guys, and then Chief there I go again, Chief Janahara has that document because I provided it to him in a statement that I made for what happened at that meeting. Councilman Lisea was there and some of the other members were there at the meeting. I read specifically from a document that said, have you checked this man's rent rolls historically for the last 10 years? Did you do your due diligence? Did you do an assessment study on him? Did you do an impact analysis prior to going into business? Had you checked this man's debt service to see what debt he had? And of course, it got disrupted, didn't get to finish. And we had what happened at that meeting without going over the details. So there were, and I'm not mistaken, Mr. Burton did the same thing. he gave those warnings to you. We tried to warn you to say, be careful what you're doing, because in the first place, those type of investments, the city should never, ever, ever, ever get involved in. It's the cardinal rule in economic development. You never partner with a high-risk commercial property owner like that, okay? The deed has been done. So what I'm trying to do right now is bring everybody to the table, hit a reset button, and say, we recognize these problems are here, because legally we're entangled with this individual. And we have to take corrective action to protect our interests in so much he's trying to protect his interests from the investment side. So we need to now make something either work out of it, or he knows this because we discussed this the first meeting we've had. I did discuss very, very sternly with him and say, you understand that we're going to have to be looking at an exit strategy if we can't come to the table and come to an agreement and come to a mutual collaboration and understanding to move forward and try to get that in sales tax revenue going as quickly as possible. If we can't, we need to look at this exit strategy. Now, we did discuss in the past, Mr. Perales and I and others, about the possibility of that legal entanglement, what it would cost. It's expensive. Anytime you're involved into a contractual obligation with somebody and you're trying to pull out in the middle of that contract, you're going to spend thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars, just trying to get out of it. Then it's going to result in a negotiated settlement at the end. And so you're going to lose either way you look at it. Nobody wins. So the best thing that I thought would be is get together with them and get these things that you're bringing out. And I'm glad and thank you for this reinforced.
You're welcome.
We'll definitely bring it to his attention when we meet with him. And that whole purpose that we're having this meeting next week or this week will be to do that and say, here's the evidence against you. This is exactly what we want to find out. Did you or did you not have the authority to spend this $1 million or 1.1 million? Did you or did you not do this, this, and that? Okay, and if you didn't, then he'll explain himself. And at that point, Mr. Perales can call to attention exactly what we're talking about. Go ahead, sir.
Just a point of clarification, Mayor. The reason I know about the $1.2 million being expended is because there was a discussion that happened with Falcon Bank during a partnership meeting.
Right, and it was in the
It-
EDC
so-
minutes, by the way.
I'm sorry?
It was in the EDC minutes as well.
There is no minutes. Partnership meetings
something-
don't have minutes.
Okay, what I'm saying is it was some reference somewhere that I
Okay,
read it
okay,
as well.
but
Yeah,
the discussion itself happened during a partnership meeting
right.
with all the partners present, inclusive of Falcon Bank, when when Sid agreed that he had spent it without authorization. So I'm not making this up, and
No, no,
I
I'm
have
not saying
nothing
you are
against,
either.
no.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up, and I don't have anything against Sid.
Yeah.
I just don't trust him.
Right.
That's all.
And I think that once we get to this table, we'll be able to this once and for all settle it out. We'll find out where he stands. We'll find out what he's going to say, whether he's going to want to move forward or not. And at that point, then we have to take our interest in mind and decide what is best for us in the exit strategy at that point. But at least we've exhausted every single effort with the new administration in place now, has everybody at the table, reset button hit. Now you have a choice. We move forward. How do we move forward? And how do we rectify these problems that happened in the past? And if we can't do it, then we look at that exit strategy.
One last comment, please.
Yes,
We're no longer in a contract, we're in a partnership,
there you go.
okay?
Mhm.
And number two, what you need to know, gentlemen, is in the last 2 years, the partnership managing partner was required to give us a certified CPA sign-off audit of the operation at Wonderland of the Americas Mall. I don't think that's been done.
Okay.
Has it been done? Okay.
I'm sure Mr. Perales will bring that up at the meeting. So you've got a list of things you're probably going to touch on, right? Correct? You better have. Yeah, because this is the time, this will be the time that we can hash it out once and for all, get it all out on the table and determine if whether they're going to actually do and respond to some of these accusations that are being made and bonify them. And
Okay.
once we do, then we can move forward and council can decide and EDC can decide as to which direction to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for hearing me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. May we recognize?
Yes. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm gonna take it. I've voiced my concerns several times on the relationship that has started to build with the Wonderland Partnership. And my concern was some of the stuff that was discovered today was brought forward today, I'm sure was not disclosed at the beginning. So I'm very, very concerned of us moving forward with the partnership, knowing what has happened, what has transpired, and what continues to be held back from the partnership. So that's one of the main reasons I'm very reluctant to do anything moving forward with the partnership. And, you know, sometimes it seems that I'm just against everything, but no, there's a logic to what I'm doing and the logic to why I believe we should be a little bit more cautious before we jump into trying to build something with a weak foundation. Thank you.
Point taken, and I think that's a very well thought out statement. And I think you're within your purview to believe and think that, and we'll move forward. And you ultimately have the final decision. So it's within your purview, once it's brought to you, what you decide to do to move forward. All I'm trying to do is, as the mayor of the city, is call a meeting with this individual, get it all on the table, present him with all this evidence that's been presented to us, and say, what do you say? How do you respond to that? And let's see what he comes back with, and then I report back to you. Mr. Pedales will report back, and then you make your decision as to how you want to move forward. Okay? So I'm fully on board with that. Councilman Burton,
Is Clay still does he represent us
EDC.
or the EDC? Does he represent?
EDC. Mm-hmm. Right. And the other thing that I've taken into account my colleagues' comments, Mr. Lasea, I respect those because of the fact that, you know, it is logical that we should look at from that perspective as well as how we hold back, whether we should trust somebody or not. But we have to be careful in a public meeting how we convey those things, because we have other business entities that might look at us and say, I don't think I want to go do business. So we got to be careful how we handle Mr. Wise and deal with him. But I do agree that a careful forensic examination of his actions and what is being alleged about him needs to be looked at very carefully. And then, of course. Yeah, okay, sounds good. Well, I think you're right. Let's move forward. Okay, so let's move forward. Jack Burton, I think we're way off script on that, he says. So
I was just going to ask, are we guaranteed from our last council meeting, we passed a proclamation or whatever to let Spirit move in there. Are we getting 100% of that revenue? Does it
Okay.
wash through him to us?
directly, okay.
And the senator's office comes to us?
Okay,
Okay.
no further questions? Are we done? Councilman, we done? Time is 3:09 PM and the meeting now has been adjourned.